Chapter 68. Schwa. The basketball made a circle of white waves in the basket, which also announced that Poplar Fruit's team had defeated Uncle Jin's team once again. It was the third time. Uncle Jin put his hands on his waist and looked at Poplar Fruit helplessly. In the second round, Poplar Fruit still won by making a layup. In the third round, Poplar Fruit changed his style of play and no longer relied on his incredible jump to influence the game. Just when Uncle Jin and the others saw the dawn of victory, Poplar Fruit unexpectedly used two almost impossible jump shots to extinguish their hope again. The first jump shot was from outside the three-point line. Although Poplar Fruit suddenly jumped, Uncle Jin, who was following him closely, was not careless and jumped close to him. Poplar Fruit jumped very high, but Uncle Jin still tried to cover Poplar Fruit's eyes with his hand to obstruct Poplar Fruit's view of the shot. However, Poplar Fruit still made the shot. Even if his view was blocked, even if there was someone in front of him, even if it was from outside the three-point line, Poplar Fruit still made the shot unreasonably. It was as unstoppable as the sharpshooters in the NBA. What else could Uncle Jin and the others say? The second jump shot was from inside the three-point line. In this round, Uncle Jin and the others could be said to have forced Poplar Fruit into a corner. The three of them went up together and surrounded Poplar Fruit from the front, back, left, and right. They did not give Poplar Fruit any space to pass the ball. Even if his body was strong, it was impossible to break through the encirclement of three people, right? Uncle Jin was full of joy, thinking that he had finally defended once. However, Poplar Fruit made another jump shot. This time, Uncle Jin and Poplar Fruit jumped at the same time. Although the other two uncles reacted a little slower, they still jumped after them. I must be able to defend. Uncle Jin saw that his big hand blocked Yang was passing route. He felt that this time it was a sure thing. However, he found that when he began to fall, Poplar Fruit was still rising. Don't worry, we still have teammates. Uncle Jin comforted himself because he saw the two uncles who had caught up from behind once again put their big hands in front of Poplar Fruit. However, when he landed on the ground and Uncle Dao and Uncle Ban stopped their ascent, Poplar Fruit was still floating in the air. What kind of bounce was that? What kind of suspension was that? After the two uncles fell, they could no longer block Poplar Fruit's shot. They saw Poplar Fruit straighten his waist in the air, and with the help of the new force, his right wrist shook slightly. The basketball flew out, drawing a high parabola in the air, and then plunged into the basket. This was also the scene at the beginning of the game. Poplar Fruit once again made an unreasonable long shot, and finished off Uncle Jin's team 3 times in a row. To be honest, in terms of individual strength, except for Poplar Fruit, the other two players in Poplar Fruit's team were not comparable to the 3 uncles. However, Poplar Fruit alone could take on 2 or even 3 opponents. This was the power of a star player. One person could hold up the sky. Even if his teammates were bad, such as Uncle Gua's skills and body, Poplar Fruit could lead them to victory. However, Poplar Fruit did not like this, because he was not Kobe Bryant. He did not like to have all the ball in his hands. Like last time, Poplar Fruit's team had Ah Feng, and Ah Feng's strength was not bad. Poplar Fruit was relieved to be the point guard. He relied on his own breakthrough to gain space for his teammates, and then passed the ball to let his teammates score. Compared to one-on-one, Poplar Fruit preferred team basketball, because everyone could feel the joy of basketball. Speak of the devil. When Poplar Fruit was still thinking of Ah Feng, he suddenly heard Ah Feng's surprised cry. "Brother Yang, you are here too? Great." Poplar Fruit turned his head and looked. Ah Feng followed a very tall boy from the entrance of the court. The boy was much taller than Poplar Fruit. He was at least 1.95 meters tall. He was not thin, and the muscles on his arms were very thick. He looked like a fierce general. "Why are you so late?" Poplar Fruit laughed. "My cousin came today, so I played a little late." Ah Feng explained. "This is my cousin and Ziming. He is on the school team of Guangdong Polytechnic University." "So strong?" Poplar Fruit knew that Guangdong Polytechnic University's basketball team was a strong team that participated in the Cubs. The Cubs was different from the Cuba. This competition was called the Great Super League, and professional athletes were allowed to participate. As long as they could provide a study in school certificate, Professional players registered in the China Basketball Association could also participate. Guangdong Polytechnic University's basketball team used to have Emperor Yi, Zhu Fengyu, and other badass players. They also won many Cubs championships, so their strength could be seen. Hello. And Ziming was very friendly and reached out his hand to shake Poplar Fruit's hand. He said, I heard from Xiaofeng that you play very well. Today, I also came because of your reputation. No, how good can it be? Feng exaggerated. We are all amateurs and we secretly exercise our bodies. Poplar Fruit said modestly, Haha, you came at the right time today. Uncle Jean patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and laughed. This kid, he didn't come once in half a month. We rarely see him, but as soon as we see him, we are beaten by him. Ha! When it came to basketball, and Ziming's tone became more serious. He said, actually when we were at the entrance, we saw that Brother Yang was really good at basketball. His jumping ability was better than many of the people on our school team. I really want to play against you. Then let's learn from each other. Uncle Jean said happily. You come to our team, Xiaofeng go to Poplar Fruit's team. Finally, there was an expert that seemed to be able to restrain Poplar Fruit. Uncle Jean secretly thought with tears streaming down his face. God, you finally gave us a chance to defeat the great landlord Yang? With a match between experts, the other team's uncles were also very happy. They sat down and continued to be spectators. If they went up, they would be beaten, but if they watched from the sidelines, they could rest for a while. After they were divided into groups, they changed the rules this time. It was 4 against 4, and they played 5 balls. The first to kick off was Poplar Fruit's team. Uncle Gwen knew that he was not good enough, so he ran outside the center circle to serve. Poplar Fruit received the ball and signaled for everyone to spread out. He wanted to play 1v1 in Ziming. Although he was very humble just now, Poplar Fruit was still a young man in his late 20s. After all, there was still a competitive spirit in his bones. It was rare to meet a professional opponent, so Poplar Fruit wanted to measure his opponent's strength. The two of them faced each other between the three-point line and the free throw line, and Poplar Fruit started to dribble the ball in a very flashy way. Poplar Fruit had never trained professionally. He learned his moves from TV. Although he could dribble the ball from his crotch and behind his back, he could not string these moves together to break through the opponent's routine. And Ziming was very experienced in dealing with Poplar Fruit. After all, he was someone who had played in big games. He steadily bent his knees and stared at Poplar Fruit's shoulder, and did not rush forward to snatch the ball. In fact, Ziming also had his difficulties. How could he not want to snatch the ball? However, Poplar Fruit's dribbling speed was too fast. If he tried to snatch the ball, he did not have full confidence that he could snatch it. Who knows, maybe Poplar Fruit would take the opportunity to break through. And Ziming dealt with all changes by remaining unchanged, not leaving any openings. This gave Poplar Fruit a headache. He simply tried to break through from Ziming's left side. And Ziming immediately blocked him. It's not that easy, Poplar Fruit shouted in his heart. He skillfully dribbled the ball from behind, passed the ball to his left hand, and then changed his body's center of gravity to the left. Poplar Fruit's speed was really fast, and Ziming almost let him change direction and break through. However, Ziming was really experienced. He stuck close to Poplar Fruit, used his advantage of height and long arms, and firmly blocked Poplar Fruit's path to the basket. Poplar Fruit forced a shot, but the ball did not go in. Uncle Jean even ran over to pick up the rebound. This time, it was Ziming's turn to solo Poplar Fruit. Ziming thought that since he was nearly 10 centimeters taller than Poplar Fruit, he could rely on his body to take on Poplar Fruit. Therefore, he turned sideways and wanted to use his shoulder to break through Poplar Fruit. However, how could Poplar Fruit let him have his way? He steadily got into a horse stance and blocked Ziming's attacks again and again. He did not know that this gave Ziming a great shock. He was pushing against Poplar Fruit, and it was like he was pushing against a towering tree. The tree did not move, but he was exhausted. How strong was Poplar Fruit? However, he was not so stubborn that he had to go all the way. He suddenly twisted his shoulder and brushed past Poplar Fruit. I broke through, Ziming thought. He made a standard layup, and his right hand was almost at the edge of the backboard. Careful! Uncle Jean and the others' cries of surprise could be heard. And Ziming was shocked to see Yonggwa leap up from behind him like an eagle spreading its wings. Then with a slap of his hand, he smacked the basketball that he had just released onto the backboard. What a big hat! So strong? And Ziming watched Poplar Fruit jump again, and get the backboard. His eyes were burning with the desire to fight. It was only interesting to have such an opponent. And Ziming's desire to fight had been completely stimulated by Poplar Fruit. Both of them could not do anything to each other for the time being. Poplar Fruit was the first to change his strategy. He no longer played alone. Poplar Fruit asked Dafeng and Song Jiwen to run. As for Uncle Gua, he was already tired enough, so there was no need for him to run. It was good enough that he could pass the ball. Poplar Fruit passed the ball to Song Jiwen, who ran out of space and cut inside himself. Song Jiwen did not have time to shoot, and Uncle Ban had already rushed up, so he immediately passed the ball to Afeng. Afeng threw a high pass to Poplar Fruit, who ran inside. And Ziming quickly ran over and followed Uncle Ban with Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit forced himself to jump and make a shooting motion. Come down! And Ziming jumped up high, and his right hand slammed toward the ball. Uncle Ban also tried his best to block Poplar Fruit's front right side. But Poplar Fruit did not really shoot. He just gently threw the ball behind his head. He was pretending to be a pro. And he passed the ball without looking. Just when Poplar Fruit received the ball, he caught a glimpse of Song Jiwen getting rid of the defense and running to his back. So he had an idea in his mind. Poplar Fruit jumped up, attracted everyone's attention, and then unexpectedly passed the ball to Song Jiwen. At this time, it was too late for Uncle Ban to follow and defend. Song Jiwen easily made a layup in the open space and scored the first point. Good shot. Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen high-fived and said, "Good pass." Song Jiwen also said very happily. And Ziming looked at them with a smile, but in his heart, he was happy to see the game. This was interesting. The strength of the two teams was relatively equal. Although Uncle Gua was a bit of a hindrance, Poplar Fruit made up for this shortcoming very well. So the two teams did not give way to each other at both ends of the offense and defense. If you score one, I will definitely pass the next round and return one to you. Winning or losing this game was no longer important. Such a wonderful game made the audience off the court exclaim. Poplar Fruit and Ziming, the two strongest players, were also evenly matched. It was difficult to tell who would win. Chapter 69. It's finally here. Poplar Fruit put down the phone and waved his fist happily. Poplar Fruit had been waiting for 2 weeks ever since the staff of Ingyan Web informed him of the results of the second round of assessment. Finally, the manuscript for the third round of test translation was sent over. Kiki was sleeping. She only went out for a while, so Poplar Fruit was not worried. He grabbed his keys and ran out in a hurry, dragging a pair of slippers with him. When he arrived at the entrance of the residential area where the sun was shining, he finally received a copy of the manuscript from the courier. When he got home, Poplar Fruit used a small knife to cut open the package that was still steaming hot. He took out a thin stack of paper and flipped through it. The manuscript was only 5 pages. They were all photocopied in English and had a red confidentiality seal on them. Poplar Fruit rubbed the 5 pages inside. It's not easy to get your hands on this. It would be great if it was an electronic version. He could just send it to the mailbox and receive it immediately. However, he could not blame Dongxin Publishing and Ingyan Web. After all, they had the photocopied version that was sent over the sea. It could only be said that the Americans had a strong sense of confidentiality. As long as they could guarantee that the manuscript would not be leaked before the official publication, they did not care about anything complicated. Poplar Fruit could not wait. He did not even eat lunch and started reading the English manuscript in his hands. It had to be said that Poplar Fruit's English was now close to the peak. An American whose mother tongue was English might not be able to compare to Poplar Fruit. After a few months of translation, Poplar Fruit was now able to read English materials as easily as reading his mother tongue materials. If he could read technical documents that were full of obscure industry terms, what more a biography? In the previous preparation work, Poplar Fruit had specially looked for terms from the computer industry and other related high-tech industries for deep learning. But now it seemed that it was unnecessary. The terms that he learned were too profound. Not to mention how much Isaacson, as a biographer, could understand. Even if he did, he would not use them too much in his book. After all, how many readers would be willing to read a biography full of unfamiliar words? Of course, this didn't mean that Poplar Fruit's preparations were completely useless. In order to seize this opportunity, he did his best to search for reports and information on sect leader Chiao and the more famous executives in his company. This time it came in handy, because the test version was about Jonathan. Jonathan Ive, the head of Apple's design team, also designed Poplar Fruit's favorite iPad. While searching for information, Poplar Fruit learned about Jonathan Watson. Poplar Fruit didn't realize how important AI Fu was to Apple and Steve Jobs until he read the draft. Sect leader Chiao said, "The difference is that Jonathan has made, is not only at Apple but in the world is huge." The meaning of this sentence was, the changes brought by Jonathan, Steve Jobs affectionately called him Johnny, not only in Apple but also in the world have a huge impact. Sect leader Chiao even said, "If I had a spiritual partner at Apple, it's Johnny." This sentence was a bit ambiguous. It was, if I had a spiritual partner at Apple, it would be Johnny. However, the translation of the word spiritual partner was still debatable. If the words spiritual partner or soulmate were used to describe two men, it would sound like they were in love. Of course, if it was a spiritual partner, or spiritual partner, the translation effect would be much weaker. It would not reflect Steve Jobs' deep love and dependence for Jonathan. This was also the charm of literary translation. They were not like technical documents, where a source language word corresponded to only one translated word. As long as the corresponding meaning could be translated, it would be fine. Literary translation required the translator to carefully figure out the author's writing intent. What kind of message does he want the reader to receive? What does he want to convey by using this word? What is his hidden intention in choosing this way of expression? These translators had to understand thoroughly before they started translating. Secondly, when you choose which words and sentences to use to translate this paragraph, you need to carefully consider whether the information that the author wants to express can be reflected in your translation. Is their translation in line with the reading habits of the target language reader? Did his translation work perfectly with the context? There were many things that needed to be considered. These were the things that fascinated people who were willing to engage in literary translation, but also the limitations of literary translation. It was important to note that literary translation remuneration had never been very high in the industry. After many years of development, the price of literary translation had not increased much compared to more than 10 years ago. Of course, this was not absolute. The translation price of some best-selling books was not low. But even if it was high, it would not be much more than technical documents. Translators of the same level would have to put in 3 times more effort than technical documents when translating literary works. Sometimes the money in exchange would not even be as much as technical documents, or it could be said that the effort and return were not proportional at all. How could young translators, who had the heavy responsibility of supporting their families, be motivated to enter this circle? As long as possible, who would be willing to give up technical document translation work, which could easily make several times more money, and turn to the painstaking and thankless literary translation work? At present, literary translation was mostly done by the older generation of translators, and there were also many university professors doing part-time jobs. The emerging strength of the younger generation was almost non-existent, and there was a mix of good and bad. Some of the translated translations were all in vernacular, or even British Chinese, which was very difficult to read. Some people even published papers saying that this was a manifestation of cultural integration. However, was it really good to put something that people could not understand on the market? Back to Yanggua's side of the story. Poplar Fruit was fascinated by this manuscript. Isaacson was indeed a master of biography. He was extremely good at using concise words to express a lot of information. This was just like Apple's design philosophy of simplicity. It looked simple, but it was not ordinary. Isaacson described the simplicity of Apple's product design as follows. Simple underscore isn't underscore just underscore a underscore visual underscore style. It's underscore not underscore just underscore minimalism underscore or underscore the underscore absence underscore of underscore clutter. Underscore it underscore involves underscore digging underscore through underscore depth underscore of underscore the underscore complexity. The literal translation of the meaning was, simplicity is not just a visual effect, nor is it just cutting or erasing the messy things. It is related to the depth of complexity. Poplar Fruit had a deep feeling about this, especially his favorite iPhone 4, which was Sir Chiao's masterpiece. The front and back panels of the iPhone 4 used a special tempered glass design. This was unprecedented. Not only did it improve the touch and sense of security, but it also improved the look of the iPhone by more than a level. It completely left the other plastic phones on the market dozens of streets behind. This design looked very simple. Wasn't it just sticking two pieces of glass on top? However, its technical complexity was probably only understood by Apple's design team. Of course, nothing was perfect. Even for the iPhone 4, there were conflicts in design and engineering. When Jonathan designed the iPhone 4, he hoped to use a new steel ring design. This steel ring was the support structure of the body, and it could also play the role of the finishing touch on the overall design. It looked very sleek and felt very textured. And part of the steel ring could also be used as the phone's antenna. The steel ring played a crucial role in making the iPhone 4 so thin. However, this also brought a big problem. The steel ring would weaken the phone's signal. The engineer had suggested that Jonathan spray a coating on the outside of the steel ring, but Jonathan thought that it would affect the appearance of his brushed metal. Later, he chose a design with a small gap in the steel ring. This design also caused the antenna door incident. If the phone was held with the left hand, the palm would cover the small gap, so there was a 1% chance of signal loss. The problem wasn't small, but it couldn't hide the beauty of Apple's design. It also couldn't hide Jonathan's pursuit of perfection in design. Moreover, Apple's later series of public relations measures also solved the crisis very well. Looking at the history between sect leader Chiao and Jonathan, these two good friends, Poplar Fruit sighed. A gentleman would die for his bosom friend. Sect Master Chiao was able to understand Jonathan's lofty ambitions and faith in design. He was able to show unparalleled importance to design. This was probably the reason why Jonathan had always been loyal to Sect Master Chiao. And Jonathan was able to understand Sect Leader Chiao's needs, and they had the same understanding of the concept of beauty. This was also the reason why Sect Leader Chiao trusted and valued Jonathan from the beginning to the end. In the vast sea of people, it was really not easy to meet someone who understood you so well and supported you so well. Sect Leader Chiao, I'm afraid you've also wondered why Jonathan was a bearded man and not a graceful woman, right? Meeting each other, snuggling up to each other, but not being able to love each other might be one of your life's biggest regrets, right? Poplar Fruit had a smirk on his face as he thought. Too rotten. Poplar Fruit, you're about to go crazy from being a homebody. How can you harbor such deep malice towards your idol? Unable to let his thoughts run wild, Poplar Fruit shook his head and focused on reading. However, there were only 5 pages. Before long, Poplar Fruit had already flipped to the last page. Why is there no more? Why is there so little? What happened at the end? Poplar Fruit slammed the table and shouted, I still want to read. He had just seen that Steve Jobs had returned to Apple and pulled back Jonathan, who had resigned and was about to leave. When Apple's designer-led engineer once again, there was nothing at the end. Why was it so fraudulent? Would it kill him to read a little more? Poplar Fruit felt like his heart was being scratched by a cat. Just as he was getting excited, the result came to an abrupt end. This feeling was like throwing a punch with all his might only to hit empty air. It was very depressing. No, I can't wait a few months before I can continue reading. Poplar Fruit stood up and paced back and forth in the living room with his head in his hands. Only by passing this test would he have the opportunity to read the rest of the text earlier. Poplar Fruit had not eaten lunch yet, so he hastily cooked some noodles for himself and finished them quickly. After simply satisfying his appetite, Poplar Fruit sat in front of the computer and enthusiastically began the third and final round of the translation test. He clenched his fists and his eyes shone with confidence as he thought to himself, "This time, I will do my best to recruit translators. I, Poplar Fruit, will definitely be the translator of sect leader Qiao's biography." Chapter 70. Bang Bang. In the basketball stadium of Guangdong University of Technology, two tall boys were having a one-on-one bullfight. Two boys were sitting on the floor on the side of the court, sweating profusely. F***ck Dong Xiaofang, you cheated. The boy with a crew cut was caught off guard by the boy named Dong Xiaofang. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Dong Xiaofang turned around to get rid of him, then bent down to catch the basketball. He jumped up, and the basketball bounced gently on the white line of the backboard and fell into the basket. After landing, he picked up the basketball, bounced it in his hand, and said with a smile, "All is fair in war. If you lose, you lose. Qiuzin, don't deny it." "Humph, I'll kill you in the next game." Qiuzin smashed his right fist on his left palm, turned his head and sat with the other two. "It's my turn." The boy sitting on the far left patted his butt and stood up. In fact, there was no dust on the smooth wooden court. He just flattened his sweat-soaked pants. He was a little shorter than Dong Xiaofang and Qiuzin, but he was still more than 1.8 meters tall. His body was very strong, and the two strong chest muscles on his chest were about to burst his jersey. When Dong Xiaofang saw him, his face drooped. He wailed, "Master Ji, don't bully me. My small arms and legs can't carry you." Dong Xiaofang raised his thigh, which was not as thick as the boy named Zhang Jia's arm. Zhang Jia smiled and said, "It's okay. I won't eat you by force." After the kickoff, Zhang Jia received the basketball thrown by Dong Xiaofang from outside the three-point line, and then began to dribble the ball slowly. Looking at Zhang Jia's slow movements, Dong Xiaofang felt a lot of pressure. Every time Zhang Jia's arm swung, the muscles of his whole body undulated, like a small mountain rolling. It looked very scary. Every time Zhang Jia took a step forward, Dong Xiaofang couldn't help but take a step back. "Dong Xiaofang, what are you playing?" The mature-looking boy sitting with Qiuzin scolded. "Why are you afraid of him? Go and grab the ball. If you retreat without a fight, why do you still want to play basketball?" His tone was similar to that of his parents, who had expected better from him. After being scolded, Dong Xiaofang lowered his head and replied, "Yes, Captain." He was a freshman who had only been in school for a year. He still had deep respect for the captain of the school team who had served for 3 years. As a traditional strong basketball school in the south, Guangdong Provincial University of Technology often had professional players in the team. It was not easy for Deng Jian, an ordinary student, to stand out from several professional players and become the captain of the school team. Of course, Deng Jian's skills were still very strong. Every year many NBL and even CBA teams threw him an olive branch. However, Deng Jian did not get what he wanted because of the layers of resistance from his family. Dong Xiaofang was the one with the most potential among the freshmen in the school team. Deng Jian had taken a fancy to him during the freshman selection last year. However, Dong Xiaofang relied too much on his talent. He wasn't willing to endure hardships and didn't practice his basic skills properly. Even when he was competing, he liked to play tricks. This was something that Deng Jian found hard to let go of. He had high expectations for him, but he was even more disappointed. Zhang Jia straightened up, patted the ball on the spot and said, "Xiaofang, I said I won't eat you by force, so I won't eat you by force. Fight bravely." "Okay." Dong Xiaofang nodded and tried his best to stick to him. He raised one hand in the air and tried to grab Zhang Jia's basketball with the other. Hee. The corner of Zhang Jia's mouth twitched, and he suddenly made a move. Although he was tall and sturdy, his agility wasn't bad at all. He lightly arched his buttocks, and then with his left leg as an axis, he turned his body and bypassed Dong Xiaofang. However, Dong Xiaofang did not give up. He was much faster than Zhang Jia. He gritted his teeth, his chest pressed against Zhang Jia's big arm, and followed Zhang Jia closely. His long arm waved in front of Zhang Jia, interfering with his layup. However, Zhang Jia was an old team member who was almost in his senior year. He was experienced. He knew that Dong Xiaofang wanted to stick close to him and rush down. His shoulders suddenly lowered, and then he took a step back. Suddenly without support. Dong Xiaofeng was suddenly brought forward by the strength of his body, and staggered a few steps. At this time, Zhang Jie seized the opportunity and easily made a 45-degree shot that was almost under the basket. Although his arm strength was too big, and he could not control the strength of his outside shot, Zhang Jie did not hesitate to make a shot in such a position where almost anyone could make a shot. If he did not make such a shot, it would really be a disgrace to the school team of Guangdong University of Technology. Although he did not guard against the shot, Deng Jian still applauded Dong Xiaofeng's efforts. He shouted in a deep voice, "Good play. That's the way. You can only win if you dare to fight." He did not expect Dong Xiaofeng to be able to guard against the impact of a player inside the three-point line as an outside player, but he must have such an attitude. As soon as his voice fell, the door of the basketball stadium was pushed open with a creak. The group of people turned their heads and saw Enziming in a jersey walk in. Brethren, Mingzai, Olden, and other greetings were endless. Enziming responded to them one by one, and then he asked curiously, "Captain, why are there so few people today?" Deng Jian smiled and said, "Isn't the World University Games held in Shengta City recently? A few of them went to volunteer, and a few of them went to join in the fun. Dafu and Jiashuan went back to their hometown 2 days ago for the summer vacation. It's not bad to have so many people. Didn't they volunteer for the Asian Games last year? Why did they go to the World University Games again? I don't think it's rare." Enziming shook his head. They're lucky to be able to participate in such a world-class sports event when they're still students, and they're even able to volunteer. I think after this time, I don't know how many years later there will be another one. Just let them have fun. It's okay. Hee, I think only the freshmen like to join in the fun. Qiuzin said, "We don't have the enthusiasm to stand guard in such a hot weather." "What freshmen like to join in the fun?" Dong Xiaofeng said discontentedly. "I didn't go, okay?" Deng Jian hit the nail on the head and said, "You didn't go because you are lazy." The captain's words made everyone laugh. Dong Xiaofeng muttered, "It's not interesting." As they chatted, their bullfight continued. Dong Xiaofeng really couldn't compete with Zhang Jie in terms of strength, but he also had his advantages. Dong Xiaofeng's speed was very fast. He could run 100 meters in under 12.5 seconds, and his body was also very flexible. Speed was difficult to show in half of the bullfight, but flexibility was different. Dong Xiaofeng's left and right hands were bouncing the ball faster and faster, and the range was also getting bigger and bigger, to the point where his knees needed to swing back and forth every time he bounced the ball. His dribbling was not just a simple two-handed dribbling, nor was it limited to one posture. Instead, it was a high-speed transition between high, low, crotch, back, and other different movements. It was different from Poplar Fruit's simple dribbling. His every movement looked like he was going to break through, making people unable to understand his intentions. Although he had been teammates with Dong Xiaofeng for so long, Zhang Jie still couldn't figure out which of Dong Xiaofeng's movements were real and which were fake. His speed was too fast, and he didn't dare to rush forward, for fear of being broken through. Dong Xiaofeng suddenly turned his act into reality. He moved his right leg, and was about to sweep past Zhang Jie's left side. Zhang Jie hurriedly followed, but Dong Xiaofeng dribbled the ball from behind. His right hand was empty, and then his left hand received the ball. His body swayed, and he was about to change direction. Not good. Zhang Jie quickly twisted his strong body and moved his right leg, wanting to follow. However, Dong Xiaofeng's movement was also fake. He was waiting for Zhang Jie to spread his legs apart, and couldn't jump for a while. Then he took a step back, jumped up forcefully with his waist, and shot a pull-up shot. Dong Xiaofeng's shot was very accurate. In a situation where Zhang Jie couldn't interfere with him, the basketball was like an infrared-guided missile, accurately falling into the basket. This was Dong Xiaofeng's super talent. He was a bit like Mai Di, with good physical fitness, accurate mid-range shots, sharp breakthroughs, and pull-up jump shot. However, he also inherited Mai Di's fatal shortcomings: over-reliance on talent, weak defensive willpower, and not enough fighting spirit. If he could be down to earth and train seriously, in the future, He might be able to become a general in Guangdong University of Technology, or even a professional club. Therefore, while Deng Zhiyan was disgusted with Dong Xiaofang's laziness, he still forced Dong Xiaofang to strengthen his training like a goat, honing his fighting spirit that was willing to endure hardships. After a few rounds of training, Enziming wiped the sweat off his face and said to Deng Zhiyan, "Captain, this won't work. If we don't compete, everyone won't be enthusiastic, and it won't be effective." Deng Zhiyan nodded in agreement and said, "I know, but how can we compete at this time? There are only 5 of us and we can't even form 2 teams. If we want to compete with other teams, and it's the holidays, who would still be in school? Why don't we find a professional team to practice with? Or we can be their sparring partners." Enziming said with his eyes shining. "You wish," Deng Zhiyan said with a smile. "With just the few of us, do you think we're qualified to be the professional team's sparring partners?" That was true. Other than Deng Zhiyan, who was a stable starter for the school team, the others were only substitutes, or even the substitutes of substitutes. Without the support of those few professional players, the strength of the student players was still too far behind the strength of the club. "Oh, that's true." Enziming shook his head. Deng Zhiyan said, "At this time, it's not easy to find opponents of similar strength. Let's train like this and hold our spirits. When school starts, I'll contact opponents for everyone." "There's not much difference in strength." Enziming's eyes suddenly lit up and said, "I know a few people who play well." He told them about his experience playing in Jinli district last time. "You mean there's a Higashiyama University graduate who's better than you? What's his name?" Deng Zhiyan was stunned. He didn't remember such a person. Enziming's strength ranking in the school team was also very high. He was usually called the best 6th player. "Poplar Fruit. Captain, you probably haven't heard of him. He didn't participate in the school team before," Enziming said. "It's not just Poplar Fruit. The other uncles are also very good. They play very methodically." "Okay, you go and contact them. See if we can arrange a time for us to go and play with them. If we don't play, I'll feel bored." Deng Zhiyan laughed. "Okay, I'll go back and ask my cousin." Enziming nodded. Chapter 71. Today Duan Xueqing was very strange, Poplar Fruit thought. He had just called her. Originally, he wanted to go to the old house on the weekend and invite his old neighbors, Lu Gilin and Fang Wenjing, to have a meal. He also wanted her to go with him. However, when Poplar Fruit proposed to go over the weekend, Duan Xueqing was like a frightened rabbit. She directly refused Poplar Fruit's invitation. However, when Poplar Fruit asked her why, she stuttered. In the end, Duan Xueqing was rarely angry. She said, "Anyway, don't come over for a while." Then she hung up the phone. This made Poplar Fruit feel confused. He could only smile bitterly and cancel his plans for the weekend. Poplar Fruit muttered in his heart, "This girl, don't tell me she has a boyfriend? Could it be that he brought it home? Is it necessary to be so afraid of me finding out?" Of course, Duan Xueqing didn't have a boyfriend like Poplar Fruit thought. However, in the past few days, Duan Xueqing's mother had come from Jiangnan province. Duan Xueqing didn't want her mother to meet Poplar Fruit so early. Jiangnan was located in the coastal area. The mountains and rivers were connected, and it nurtured the unique spirituality and wisdom of the people in Jiangnan. However, because Jiangnan's resources were relatively poor, there were more people than land. Agriculture alone couldn't support the survival of a family. Therefore, many people in Jiangnan were forced to travel north and south, and even go abroad. The hardships of traveling the world not only cultivated their hardworking spirit, but also inspired their enthusiasm for entrepreneurship and adventure. The genes of business flowed in the blood of Jiangnan people, and Duan Xueqing's family was the same. Her family owned more than 50 boutiques in Jiangnan, specializing in selling fashionable clothes and bags imported from France. They were also famous in the fashion industry in Jiangnan. Duan Xueqing had 2 older brothers. After they graduated from college, they gradually took over the family business under the guidance of their father. Duan Xueqing was the youngest girl in the family. Her family loved her very much. They knew that Duan Xueqing's cold personality was not suitable for business, so they didn't force her to go home. They just supported her to live the life she wanted. However, it didn't mean that they completely ignored her. Her daughter had been working for almost 2 months. Duan Xueqing's mother couldn't stay at home. She was worried that her daughter didn't live well, eat well, and work unhappy, so she took a plane to come to see her daughter. After Duan Xueqing's mother arrived, she was a little unsatisfied. Because the place Duan Xueqing lived in was too shabby in her opinion. There was only 1 room and 1 living room, and the decorations weren't good either. She was still the little princess of a billionaire family. How could she live in such a small place? After she finished looking at the room, Hotel Duan Xueqing. Can't rent a good house? We can also buy a house. Live too far away from the place where you work? Then we can buy a car for you. If you don't like Beetles, we can buy a BMW. After Duan Xueqing went to college, she wanted to be independent. Especially after she got a job, she didn't want to spend her family's money. There was a deeper meaning, but it was always hidden in Duan Xueqing's heart. Duan Xueqing's mother wanted to change a better environment for her daughter to live a more comfortable life, but Duan Xueqing didn't want to. Because of that, the mother and daughter quarreled. The main reason was that Duan Xueqing didn't talk much and didn't like to explain. Under such circumstances, Duan Xueqing didn't want her mother to see Poplar Fruit and Kiki. Duan Xueqing's mother was experienced. If she knew the existence of Poplar Fruit, she would know what Duan Xueqing was thinking. More importantly, Poplar Fruit already had a daughter. If Duan Xueqing's mother knew that, the consequences would be unimaginable. Duan Xueqing knew Poplar Fruit well. If Poplar Fruit heard that his mother was coming, he would definitely invite Duan Xueqing's mother to have a meal. He always thought that he was a big brother. He didn't understand a woman's mind at all. Duan Xueqing was annoyed by the quarrel with her mother. She didn't want to explain too much to Poplar Fruit, so she pretended to be angry and hung up the phone. She didn't want Poplar Fruit to come over. However, after hanging up the phone, Duan Xueqing began to worry again. What if Poplar Fruit misunderstood? Was it bad of me to lose my temper just now? What if he thought that I was a girl who liked to throw tantrums and hated me? Duan Xueqing hugged her knees and sat on the bed. She was full of worries. Her long hair was spread on the pillow, and the light reflected a dark luster on it. Poplar Fruit didn't know what Duan Xueqing was thinking. He didn't hate her as much as Duan Xueqing was worried about. Poplar Fruit just thought that these were just small waves in life. They were nothing to worry about. Recently, he learned a new skill to tease Kiki, singing. Originally, he used his mobile phone and small speaker to play songs for Kiki. Kiki really liked to listen to it. However, he found out 2 days ago that Kiki preferred to listen to her father sing for her. Moreover, he wanted to sing in front of her. The recording couldn't fool Kiki. Poplar Fruit didn't expect that Kiki would burst out with such enthusiasm as soon as he started to sing. At that time, he was humming Adele, an English female singer who became popular this year. Atkins sings Someone _like you. This song was just released at the beginning of this year, and it occupied the first position in the major charts. The faint sadness under Adele's magnetic voice made this song popular all over the world. Although there was only the piano accompaniment, this song was sung by Adele with a very rhythmic feeling. It was like reciting a long poem, and the cadence was very pleasant to listen to. Poplar Fruit walked in front of the rocking chair with a book in his hand. He pinched his voice and sang the climax of the song. Don't forget me, I beg, I remember you said, sometimes it's last in love, sometimes it's hurts instead. At this time, Kiki suddenly shook her little hand excitedly and squealed. At first, Poplar Fruit didn't pay attention to it. When he walked over, his eyes lit up and he turned his head. Unsure, Poplar Fruit squatted down in front of the rocking chair and looked into Kiki's big, beautiful eyes. He sang the 2 lines of the song again and said in his heart, Kiki, one more time for Papa to see. Looking at her father and being influenced by her father's singing, Chi-Chi kicked her little feet and her eyes turned into 2 crescent moons. She opened her little mouth and called out, ooh. Although she didn't know which plane Chi-Chi was calling out in, Yonghua could clearly distinguish that the rhythm of Chi-Chi's calling was the rhythm of her own singing just now. It was exactly the same. At that time, Poplar Fruit was shocked. Was his daughter that amazing? As a person who had always sung out of tune since childhood, Poplar Fruit found hope in his daughter. He was a born musician. At only 4 months old, she could grasp the rhythm so accurately. When she grew up, she would definitely become a singer on the same level as Deng Lijun. Chi-Chi was a genius, and Yangguo was proud of her. Then he began to giggle and fantasize about his daughter's appearance on the stage in the future. No matter what the future held, from now on, Poplar Fruit would cultivate Kiki's singing ability. Of course, at this time, Kiki couldn't be considered to be singing. She could only be said to be humming along with Poplar Fruit. In order not to mislead his daughter, Poplar Fruit specially chose some simpler songs, even nursery rhymes. He also secretly hid in the study and practiced with the original singer for a long time. When he felt that he couldn't sing out of tune, he came to play with Kiki. And Kiki also liked this kind of interaction. Every time, she would happily sing along with Poplar Fruit. Towards the end of the song, Kiki was so tired that her little head kept nodding. After all, a baby's energy was still a little lacking. Today, Poplar Fruit and Kiki sang a very classic nursery rhyme. Only Mommy is good in the world. The reason why it was a classic was because this song had been sung since Poplar Fruit's parents' generation when they were young. Only Mommy is good in the world. After singing the first line, Poplar Fruit felt that something was wrong. He was the only father in the family now. Where did the mother come from? If this song was remembered by Kiki, what would he do if she didn't call him Daddy but Mommy in the future? And what if she cried and asked him for Mommy in the future when she was sensible? Yes, he couldn't sing like this. Poplar Fruit thought to himself. Kiki's long eyelashes fluttered in confusion as she looked at her father. Why did he stop singing after just one line? Don't worry. Poplar Fruit smiled as he patted Kiki's little head. The hair on her head was so comfortable to touch. He sorted out the lyrics in his heart and removed the word Mommy and replaced it with Daddy. Only Daddy is good in the world. A child with a father is like a treasure. Poplar Fruit sang 2 lines, then stopped and looked at Kiki. Aha! Kiki's eyes flashed. She pouted her little mouth and hummed, ah ha ha ha. Well sung. Poplar Fruit smiled as he clapped his hands to give Kiki some encouragement. Now singing was a game that Poplar Fruit and Kiki played every day. Every day after taking a bath, when the sun was setting, Poplar Fruit would take her to the floor-to-ceiling window in the living room. They would wave their little hands and sing slowly. The setting sun seeped in through the gaps between the green wisteria on the balcony, accompanied by Chi-Chi's light singing voice that resembled the song of a cuckoo. It slowly flowed over the father and daughter pair. The warm air was filled with a faint fragrance. He thought that after a few weekends he would continue his daily life like this. But in the evening, his friend, Ah Feng, knocked on his door and told him that his cousin's school team wanted to invite Poplar Fruit and Uncle Jean to play basketball this weekend. Poplar Fruit was willing. It would be very interesting to be able to play with a master. But except for him, everyone else had work. He couldn't guarantee whether they would be free. So Poplar Fruit asked Ah Feng to wait first. Today, Song Jiwen went home and wasn't across the street. He called Song Jiwen first. When he heard that he was playing basketball with the school team of Guangdong University of Technology, Song Jiwen agreed. He said that there was no problem on the weekend. Saturday and Sunday were fine too. Next, he called Uncle Jean. Uncle Jean was also interested in this opportunity as he also liked to play basketball. Uncle Jean told Poplar Fruit that the 3 of them were usually free on the weekend, but it was better to wait for him to confirm. While waiting for Uncle Jin's reply, Ah Feng said to Poplar Fruit excitedly, Brother Yang, when you play basketball, can I join your team? I can be a substitute too? For his cousin's school team, Ah Feng had been admiring it for a long time. He had always regarded Guangdong University of Technology as his goal. He wanted to enter this university through the college entrance examination, then join the school team and compete in the national competition like his brother. Now that he had the opportunity to compete with them, how could he not be excited? Poplar Fruit smiled and patted him on the shoulder. He said, Don't worry. If we make an appointment to play basketball, you will definitely be one of us. Soon Uncle Jean called back. His hearty laughter came from the receiver. Little Yang, I asked the two of them. Let's set the date for this Saturday? This Saturday. Okay, I will let them know. Poplar Fruit put down the phone and nodded at Afong with a smile. After getting a positive answer, Afong jumped up excitedly. Chapter 72. Poplar Fruit made an appointment with the Guangdong University of Technology's school team to play basketball. He was looking forward to the weekend. When he went out to exercise in the morning, he even brought along a basketball to play a few rounds. He felt like he was sharpening his knife for the game. However, before the weekend came, he received a call from Ingyan Network. The person who called was the same customer service lady from Ingyan Network. When he picked up the phone, Poplar Fruit's heart was beating wildly. Mr. Poplar Fruit, first of all, I would like to congratulate you. You have successfully passed our last round of assessment. The customer service lady's voice was very excited. She paused for a moment, but Poplar Fruit was already in ecstasy. Did I really succeed? Poplar Fruit could not believe his ears. Although his translation ability was one of the best in Cinda Company, he had never translated any books. His works had never been tested by the market. Yet, he had passed 3 rounds and defeated hundreds of people to successfully become the translator of sect leader Qiao's biography? It was amazing. Although Poplar Fruit was very confident in his own ability, it felt so good to be recognized by others. This was probably the closest he had ever been to his idol. Poplar Fruit did not know what to say. The customer service lady continued. In other words, you have been selected as one of the translators of Steve Jobs' biography. Next, we need you to sign a translation contract with us, and a new confidentiality contract. Wait, please wait. Poplar Fruit interrupted the customer service lady. He frowned and asked, That's not right. Did you just say one of the translators? Could it be that there are other interpreters besides me? The customer service lady flipped through the form in her hand and replied, Yes, Mr. Poplar Fruit. There are a total of 4 translators selected. Do you have any questions about the results? Of course I do. Poplar Fruit roared in his heart. It was fine if there were not only 1 translator, but 4 translators for 1 book? What was going on? Poplar Fruit did not believe in team translation the most. In the past, when he was in university, he had also done a similar project. A few people would translate a document together. In the end, when they saw the expression on the teacher's face when he gave them marks, it was really difficult. Now that he thought about it, that translation could really be thrown into the water. The first problem with team translation was that the level of the people working together would be uneven, so there would be a big gap in the translation after the summary. Of course, this time, there were so many people for Dongxin Publishing and Yaoyan to choose from, so there probably wouldn't be too much of a difference. Secondly, every translator's translation style is different. Some prefer to be more straightforward, while others prefer to be more scholarly. Some prefer to change the style of the original text, while others prefer to use the author's method of expression. Some translate with a strong accent, while others prefer to use an easy-to-understand language style, and so on. There are many more. These differences are common. It is not only caused by different language education, but also related to everyone's preferences. Translator's notes, 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 translator's notes. Poplar Fruit asked in confusion. Why 4 translators? The customer service girl explained, because this book needs to be translated for a lot of words and time is tight. It needs the cooperation of multiple translators to complete it. That won't do. Poplar Fruit shook his head. Can't I do it alone? I'm very fast at translating. Sorry, Mr. Poplar Fruit, I don't have the right to make such a decision. This project is really important, and we can't be careless. You can think about it again. In fact, for translators are also very good. You don't have to work so hard. Everyone can work together to complete such a book that is destined to attract the attention of the whole country. What a sense of achievement. Right. The customer service girl tried to persuade Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit hesitated for a moment, But he still couldn't convince himself. He said to the customer service girl, "How about this, you report to the higher-ups and tell them what I think. I think that's such a good book. If 4 translators work together to translate it, the final result may not be satisfactory. If they still decide to use 4 translators in the end, I'm willing to withdraw from this project, although this project is really important to me." After hanging up the phone, Poplar Fruit lay on the sofa and sighed deeply. If he couldn't do his best, he didn't want to be involved and become a member of the team that destroyed it. Poplar Fruit didn't know that his phone call caused a huge debate at Dongxin Publishing. Several chief editors and associate editors even slammed the table and argued. These things happened thousands of miles away. Poplar Fruit only knew that the next morning, when he came back from exercising and bought breakfast, he saw a woman standing in front of his house. A very handsome woman. She looked to be in her mid-20s. She had short hair with neat bangs and a clean and flawless oval face. Her facial features looked a little delicate with light makeup on. She was also dressed very fashionably. Her black leather jacket and skinny jeans matched her very individuality. At first glance, she was the representative of a fashionable woman in the city. Beautiful was ashamed in front of her. The word handsome was even more appropriate to describe a man. However, Poplar Fruit had never seen such a woman before. She was holding a Gucci bag in one hand and a suitcase in the other. What was she doing standing in front of his house? Poplar Fruit looked at her confusedly as he carried the porridge, buns, and basketball and walked over. The woman looked at Poplar Fruit with vigilance. Then she put down the suitcase with her right hand and took out her iPhone from the bag. She opened the screen and looked at it. "Excuse me, who are you looking for?" Poplar Fruit scratched his hair that was wet with sweat and asked. "This is Jinli District Apartment, Block 13, Room 503, right?" Her accent had a strong Beijing accent. "Yes. My home." Poplar Fruit nodded and said, "You are Poplar Fruit?" The woman compared the phone in her hand and asked. Poplar Fruit frowned. He thought, could it be that she met a salesperson? Even his name had been thoroughly investigated. But that's not right. I've never seen a salesperson with a Gucci bag. He also felt that the woman in front of him, who was not even as tall as his shoulder, was not a threat. Poplar Fruit nodded and said, "Yes, I am Poplar Fruit. May I ask who you are?" The woman's face finally relaxed. She stretched out her right hand gracefully and said, "Great, I finally found you. I am the deputy chief editor of Dongxin Publishing. My name is Zheng Yujie." Oh, it turned out that she was from Dongxin. Poplar Fruit suddenly realized. He was also surprised. He had just expressed his attitude yesterday. Why did someone come today? He looked at Zheng Yujie's right hand, smiled awkwardly and said, "Miss Zheng, let's wait a moment. You see, I have so many things now, and I am sweating all over. Let's go in and talk." Zheng Yujie smiled indifferently, then stepped back. Poplar Fruit hurried to open the door. The two of them were almost standing together. Zheng Yujie could only feel the strong masculine smell of Poplar Fruit. She blushed and stepped back quickly. Poplar Fruit opened the door and let Zheng Yujie in. He put the breakfast on the table and asked, "Miss Zheng, did you come from Beijing?" "Yes, I arrived early this morning." Zheng Yujie stood in the living room and looked at the decorations in the house. "You didn't fly here just for me, did you?" Yanghua joked. "It's all because of you." Zheng Yujie glanced at him and said with a little dissatisfaction, "I also took the midnight flight." Well, it was true. Poplar Fruit was a little flattered. Although the woman in front of him looked a little young, according to her, she was the deputy chief editor of a publishing house. Poplar Fruit was touched by her attitude and the importance she attached to him that made a deputy chief editor fly across half of China overnight to find him. Well, of course, he was a little skeptical. This kind of thing sounded a little mysterious. Zheng Yujie turned her head and saw a little doubt in Poplar Fruit's eyes. She handed her business card to Poplar Fruit and said, "See, I didn't lie to you, right?" There was a little dissatisfaction in her tone. She was a little rude. Poplar Fruit didn't mind. He took the business card and looked at it. The card was beautifully made with golden thread. It really did have the address of Dongxin Publishing and her title. It should be real. However, it was the first time he saw such a young deputy chief editor. From the way she spoke, it felt like she was a person with an unruly personality. Maybe she was the daughter of an official. If that was the case, then it made sense. However, Poplar Fruit didn't want to delve into it, so he didn't ask. Miss Zheng, have you eaten breakfast? Poplar Fruit asked. Not yet. I'm starving. Do you have fried dough sticks and soy milk? Zheng Yujie sat down at the table and looked at the breakfast Poplar Fruit bought. This person really didn't treat herself as a guest. Poplar Fruit was just asking politely, but she just sat down. Well, who told me to be hospitable? Poplar Fruit answered honestly. No, there's only steamed buns and congee with century egg and pork. She was disappointed and said, only steamed buns and congee? I don't like them. Then, she put one hand on the table and held her cheek. She tilted her head and looked at Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, do you want me to cook noodles for you? You're from the north, so you should be used to eating noodles, right? It's okay, as long as you don't cook instant noodles for me, Zheng Yujie said with a smile. Thus, Poplar Fruit took out a tomato and an egg from the fridge and cooked a bowl of noodles for Zheng Yujie. The red shredded tomato and white and yellow egg floats on top of the soup. It looked delicious. Poplar Fruit washed a pair of clean chopsticks and brought it over. Miss Zheng, I'm sorry. You came in a hurry and didn't prepare anything delicious. I can only treat you to noodles, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. It's okay, I ate too much noodles. Zheng Yujie picked up the chopsticks and smelled the tomato and egg noodles. It was too fragrant. When she lived outside in the past, she didn't cook noodles that smelled so good. What? Poplar Fruit sat opposite her and took the bowl. He seemed to have heard her say something about being old. He raised his head and asked in confusion. Nothing. Zheng Yujie was too engrossed in watching Poplar Fruit cook noodles that she didn't pay attention and exposed her manly nature. She smiled awkwardly and quickly covered it up. Oh, it's delicious. Zheng Yujie picked up the noodles with her chopsticks and ate it. It was so smooth that she almost didn't need to chew. It tasted as good as shark fin noodles. Eat slowly, eat slowly. Poplar Fruit chewed on a steamed bun and looked at Zheng Yujie with a smile. Then he handed her a spoon. Chapter 73. Poplar Fruit ate much faster than Zheng Yujie. After all, the noodles had just been cooked, and the soup was still steaming hot. After eating, Poplar Fruit stood up and put the bag in the trash can. He said, Miss Zheng, take your time to eat. I'm going to take a shower. Zheng Yujie didn't have time to pay attention to him. She was busy devouring the food in front of her. She really didn't treat herself as a guest. Poplar Fruit scratched his head awkwardly. He couldn't do anything about her, so he went back to his room to get a change of clothes. When he came out, Poplar Fruit was still careful. He locked the door of the bedroom where Kiki was sleeping and walked into the bathroom with the key. I'm full. A few minutes later, Zheng Yujie put down the big bowl and chopsticks. Then she sat on the chair with satisfaction and sighed. It's so delicious. I didn't expect a man to have such good cooking skills. I really couldn't tell. She didn't even let go of the soup just now. The whole bowl was licked clean by her like a kitten eating food. But after a while, Zheng Yujie frowned and touched her small belly. She said to herself, oh, what should I do? I seem to have eaten too much. I must be overweight today. No, I'm going to get fat again. It's all that damn Poplar Fruit's fault. Why did he make it so delicious? After saying that, she slammed the table with hatred, as if Poplar Fruit was the culprit. Then she became discouraged and muttered, no, I can't beat him. He's so tall. It's not scientific for a southerner to look like this. I'm already 1.7 meters tall, but I only reach his chest. Recalling the masculine scent of Poplar Fruit at the door, Zheng Yujie's cheeks turned a little red. She pretended to be shy as she covered her hot cheeks and said to herself, it's not like I haven't seen a handsome guy before. Little Jiejie, why do you blush so easily? Suddenly, the sound of a baby crying came from the bedroom. The sound was so loud that even Zheng Yujie, who was separated by a door and a living room, could hear it clearly. Hey, what's going on? Zheng Yujie stood up in confusion and took 2 steps forward. Why is there a child's voice? Could it be a ringtone? Right away. Right away. Daddy will be here soon. Poplar Fruit's voice came from the bathroom. Bang. The bathroom door was pulled open. Poplar Fruit put on his shirt and rushed out impatiently. When he rushed through the living room, he almost collided with Zheng Yujie. Sorry. Poplar Fruit rushed into the bedroom without looking back. He turned the key and opened the door and walked in. Although it was just a glimpse, Zheng Yujie still saw Poplar Fruit's exposed upper body. His thick and powerful chest muscles and well-defined 8-pack abs almost blinded Zheng Yujie's eyes. Poplar Fruit was different from the muscular men she saw in the gym. He was not so thick and strong. When he wore clothes, people would misunderstand him as a tall scholar. His muscles were the kind that didn't show off under his clothes, but if he took them off, they were very beautiful. My daughter would be dazzled. Coupled with his height of about 1.87 meters and long legs, even Zheng Yujie, who had seen a lot in the gym, couldn't help but cover her mouth to prevent herself from screaming. Poplar Fruit had already walked out with Kiki in his arms. Kiki, who had just woken up and didn't see her father, was now in a daze. Her eyelashes were stained with morning dew. Her tear-stained face was very pitiful. Don't cry, Kiki. Isn't Daddy here? Why are you crying again? Poplar Fruit coaxed. He gently wiped away the tears on Kiki's face with his left hand. Although she was no longer crying, Kiki still felt a little wronged and confused. She curled her hands in front of her and burrowed her little head into her father's neck. She twisted and turned, especially relying on the smell of her father's body. Seeing that there was another child in the room, Zheng Yujie's eyes widened. She finally understood what the small rocking chair in the room was all about. It wasn't an ornament. That's not right. Didn't his profile say that he was 24 years old and unmarried? Zheng Yujie was confused. Poplar Fruit, Zheng Yujie asked hesitantly. This is. Poplar Fruit raised his head and smiled. This is my daughter, Kiki. Zheng Yujie only felt a large herd of alpacas running through her heart. Why were all the good men in the world married? She said embarrassedly. What about your wife? Will she misunderstand if I'm here? Poplar Fruit was stunned. He smiled and said, No, I'm not married. How can I have a wife? Seeing that Zheng Yujie's eyes were even more confused, Poplar Fruit could only briefly explain his situation. Every time he met someone, he would have to say it once. Poplar Fruit felt that he could prepare a set of speeches and recite it every time. So that's how it is. Zheng Yujie suddenly understood. She praised in her heart. What a man who dares to take responsibility. It's a pity. Ahem, little Jie, you're in love again. While Poplar Fruit was making milk powder for Kiki, Zheng Yujie visited Poplar Fruit's study. Like Duan Xueqing, she was also shocked by the number of foreign language books in Poplar Fruit's study. French, German, Spanish, Portuguese. Looking at Mamama's notes, Zheng Yujie could be sure that these books were not placed there to fool people, but that the owner had really read them. Although Zheng Yujie didn't learn languages, she had learned how difficult it was to master a foreign language when she studied English in college for the CET 4 and CET 6 exams. Looking at the 4 foreign language books on Poplar Fruit's desk, Zheng Yujie began to worship Poplar Fruit. Zheng Yujie also saw a lot of books on translation theory. She nodded in her heart. He's so hardworking. No wonder he's so good at it. I really came to the right place this time. But will he accept my proposal? Zheng Yujie was a little uncertain about this. As the deputy chief editor of Dongxin Publishing, she had also come into contact with some of the leading figures in the academic world. She found that although they were usually very amiable, they had their own persistence in their own professional fields. It could even be said that they were stubborn. Although Poplar Fruit was not a leading figure, he was still a very talented person. Would he be as stubborn as them? When everyone sat down, Zheng Yujie stopped dawdling and went straight to the point. Poplar Fruit, I'm here this time to personally persuade you to join our project team. Zheng Yujie said. Well, I understand what you mean, but I actually made it very clear yesterday. Either I do it alone, or I have to quit. With 4 people, it really affects the quality of the translation. Poplar Fruit shook his head and said. Zheng Yujie twisted her body and said with a frown. You know that's impossible. To be honest, We received a notice from the foreign copyright owner a few days ago. Our publishing angle has been set for November 21st this year. It's completely impossible for one person to finish a book with more than 500,000 words. Poplar Fruit thought about it. 500,000 words, 2 months. It was indeed impossible for one person to finish it. Even if he translated day and night for a month, he estimated that he could only translate 200,000 words. After all, this was a literary work. It was not an ordinary technical document. The difficulty was more than 3 times higher. It was at least 5 times higher. He shook his head and said, "It's really impossible. I can only say sorry. I really don't want 4 people to read it together. You'd better find someone else." Zheng Yujie did not want to give up. She continued stubbornly, "Why are you so stubborn? Didn't you want this opportunity very much? It's so rare. How can you give up just like that?" "I used to think so, but the situation is different now," Poplar Fruit said. "I don't want such an important book to be ruined in my hands. I'll be scolded in return." "But you want others to ruin it?" Zheng Yujie stared at Poplar Fruit and said, "How can you be so irresponsible?" Poplar Fruit's expression froze. There was a chance. Zheng Yujie saw a crack appear on Poplar Fruit's solid wall. She quickly struck the iron while it was hot and said, "Think about it. You valued this book so much before. It was written by a master appointed by Steve Jobs, and it was the only biography authorized by him. Do you have the heart to destroy it by making everyone translate a translation that you can't even read? You have to know that you once had the chance to save it. Are you willing to stand by and do nothing?" Poplar Fruit frowned and said, "So what? If I don't stand by and do nothing, am I going to be the executioner myself?" "You can do your best to make us do better," Zheng Yujie said. "What do you mean?" Zheng Yujie smiled. She kept him in suspense and said, "Do you know why I came to you personally?" "Why?" Poplar Fruit had always been curious about this question. "Because you were the first of all the selected translators, because your translation was the only one that could impress all the judges, because only your article made me want to buy it. Do you know? Because of these reasons, I slammed the table and quarreled with my boss yesterday. I don't want anyone else, but I want you." When Zheng Yujie said this, she realized the ambiguity in her last sentence, and her face turned slightly red. "Anyway, that's what I meant, so I flew here from Beijing overnight," Zheng Yujie said. Her words touched Poplar Fruit, but it didn't solve the problem. Poplar Fruit said, "And then? What are you going to do? Don't talk about giving up. Come and help me. I can give you the highest authority. I'll let you be the team leader and consultant of the 4-person translation team. You can do your best to read as many manuscripts as you can. I can also let you do the final touches on the other people's manuscripts. If you feel that something is not right, you can modify it according to your own ideas. What do you think?" Zheng Yujie had thrown away her trump card this time. If Poplar Fruit didn't give in, she didn't know what to do. Under Zheng Yujie's gaze, Poplar Fruit widened his eyes and said, "Are you sure? Don't you think you've given him too much authority? Can it really work?" It was more than just too much. It was as if the whole project was handed over to Poplar Fruit to handle. Zheng Yujie nodded quickly and said, "At present, I'm fully in charge of this book. My words count." Zheng Yujie was indeed the descendant of an official, and her family background wasn't simple. She became the deputy editor at the age of 26. Her family elders contributed a lot, but this also caused her to be questioned by everyone in the publishing house. This was the first time she was leading a team on a project. It was also her chance to prove herself. In order to keep Poplar Fruit, she didn't hesitate to fly overnight from Beijing to Yangcheng. In order to do her best, she didn't hesitate to give most of her authority to Poplar Fruit. This time, she had to let everyone see her in a new light. Zheng Yujie wasn't a second-generation official who only knew how to rely on connections. Poplar Fruit thought for a long time. Suddenly, he raised his head and looked into Zheng Yujie's eyes. He said seriously, "If it's really as you say, I accept." Zheng Yujie was overjoyed. She took out a contract from her bag and said with a smile, "Okay, sign it." Chapter 74. After signing the contract, Poplar Fruit thought that he was going to send Zheng Yujie back on the plane. He didn't expect her to stuff the contract into her bag and start playing with her phone on the sofa. Miss Zheng, aren't you in a hurry to go back? Poplar Fruit scratched his head and asked. Don't call me Miss Zheng. It sounds so unfamiliar. Since we're so close, why don't you call me Yujie? Zheng Yujie turned over and looked at Poplar Fruit while lying on the sofa. Her buttocks were wrapped in jeans showing amazing curves, round and elastic. So familiar. What do you mean by so familiar? They've only known each other for less than 2 hours. Are they familiar? Although he was cursing in his heart, Poplar Fruit could only call out honestly. Yujie, aren't you in charge of this project? Why aren't you in a hurry to go back? Yujie, what's the name? Why does it sound like Sister You? And like Sister You? Isn't that so? No hurry. I'll go back tomorrow. When I ran out, I already made arrangements for them. Since it's the weekend, there aren't many things to do. Just treat it as a vacation. Zheng Yujie rolled her eyes and stared at Poplar Fruit's handsome face and said, Little Fruit, do you not welcome me? How could that be? Ha ha ha. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and laughed dryly. The lady in front of him really didn't treat him as an outsider. Moreover, she had the intention of taking over his place. Poplar Fruit was reduced to being addressed as a eunuch. All right, Poplar Fruit could only go back and do his own things according to his plan. As for Zheng Yujie, she could do whatever she wanted. But not long after, Zheng Yujie followed him to Poplar Fruit's study like a shadow. She was like a curious baby, asking questions. Hey little Guazi, did you really learn so many languages? Hey little Fruit, did you write all the notes in this book? Hey little Fruit, why are you so good at reading? Did you eat some great recovery pill? Hey little Fruit, what are you doing now? Poplar Fruit was annoyed. His mood was like the Monkey King in Journey to the West. He really wanted to get rid of this fly, who was buzzing around like a monk. But he couldn't. He still had to accompany her and answer her questions. Who told him to sign a contract to sell himself to her? The world really wasn't peaceful. Yanggua's face was covered in tears. During lunchtime, Song Jiwen's family study. Come Poplar Fruit, who's that woman? He couldn't stand it anymore. So he couldn't stand it any longer. He couldn't stand to the end of it. To Zheng's, who's that woman outside? Come Zhengti's who? After you broke up with your ex, the woman at home kept coming over. Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What's that? She's my boss. Boss, do you understand? She came from Beijing yesterday to sign a contract with me. She flew from Beijing to sign a contract with you? Is there such a boss? Song Jiwen looked at Poplar Fruit from head to toe and said, I think you've become more handsome. Didn't you see the way that woman looks at you? I think she's here for you. That's not true. She just met me for the first time this morning. Don't talk nonsense. Otherwise, it'll be bad if I can't get off the stage. Poplar Fruit said. Anyway, take it easy. But the woman outside looks good. She's got character. You can consider her. Really? Ouch. Before Song Jiwen could finish his words, he was kicked out by Poplar Fruit. After lunch, Song Jiwen spent 2 hours to pick up Kitten from Xioshan district. Because there was a game in the afternoon, Poplar Fruit had to ask her to take care of Kiki. Hearing that Poplar Fruit was going to play basketball, Zheng Yujie followed him with great interest. Holding a big purple umbrella, she and Kitten pushed Kiki to sit on the bench next to the court. When they arrived, the 5 members of the school team of Guangdong University of Technology were already waiting there. Uncle Jean and Ah Feng brought them in. Before the game started, they were all warming up for the relay layup. Seeing Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen coming over, Enziming also came up to them and introduced them. Brothers, this is Poplar Fruit, and this is his brother, Song Jiwen. Poplar Fruit, Jiwen, this is my captain, Deng Jian, and our team's members Zhang Jia, Qiu Xin, and Dong Xiaofeng. Enziming introduced the team members standing together one by one. Poplar Fruit reached out and shook hands with Deng Jian. He smiled and said, Nice to meet you. Before Deng Jian could speak, Dong Xiaofeng, who was a little taller than Poplar Fruit, interrupted and said, Poplar Fruit, I heard from Brother Ming that you are very good. We must learn from each other later. Deng Jian hit him on the head and said with a smile. You little brat, are you trying to steal my limelight? Poplar Fruit, don't mind him. Our team members are a little straightforward. They speak frankly, but they mean no harm. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, It's okay. I like people who speak frankly. When the three uncles arrived, Poplar Fruit, Song Jiwen, Afong, and the three uncles gathered in one half of the court to warm up and discuss tactics. The opposite side is a little tall. This game is going to be difficult, Uncle Dao said with a serious face. Except for Poplar Fruit, the rest of their team was less than 1.8 meters tall. On the opposite side, the 5 people were all more than 1.8 meters tall, and 3 of them, Deng Jian and Ziming and Dong Xiaofeng, were taller than Poplar Fruit. Deng Jian was estimated to be 1.95 meters tall. Don't worry, we have Poplar Fruit as the inside line, Uncle Jean said with a smile. Poplar Fruit also said with a fire in his eyes, That's right. Look at me for the rebound. Let's discuss how to play, Uncle Jean said. Let's assign who will play which positions. Song Jiwen said, I think we shouldn't be fixed with only one point guard, because their basic skills are definitely better than ours. With only one person controlling the ball, it's easy to be robbed. That's right. Jiwen, why don't you and Abin play the double point guard? Uncle Jean said with appreciation. Uncle Dao smiled and said, I can only play outside. I can't get inside. If you see me run to an empty spot, then pass the ball to me. Uncle Dao's shooting was as accurate as a scalpel. If he could hit a few more, it would be easier to play. I'm a substitute. I can play outside. Afong raised his hand and said. Uncle Jean laughed and said, Don't worry, there will definitely be a chance for you to play. The 3 of us are old bones. We'll probably be exhausted running the whole court. When the time comes, don't complain that there aren't enough substitutes. He turned his head and asked Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit, what are you going to do? Are you going to play center? Poplar Fruit pondered for a moment and said, I'll play small forward when I'm on offense and center when I'm on defense. He planned to use himself as James when he was on offense. Facing a school team that was strong in basketball, if others couldn't open it, then he would have to break through. Well, that's good. Then I'll control the inside line with you. Uncle Jean nodded and said, What we're saying now is just a warm-up. The tactics we'll implement later still depends on the strength of the opponents on the court. Poplar Fruit laughed. Yes, we'll just adapt to the situation. Song Jiwen echoed. After the discussion, Poplar Fruit and the others warmed up in their own half of the court, stretching their ligaments to prevent injuries during the whole court run later. At this time, a lot of spectators gathered on the sidelines. Most of them were basketball enthusiasts in the community. They had heard the news from each other. Although there was an empty court next to them, no one went to play. After playing so many times, the basketball players in the community knew that the strongest among them were Poplar Fruit and the other 5. When the 6 of them stood together, they almost replaced everyone in the community. Today they were going to play the strongest player in the University of Guangdong. How could they be willing to miss such a wonderful game? Before the game began, Deng Jian came over and followed Uncle Jean and Poplar Fruit. He said, Uncle Jean, Poplar Fruit, let's have a meal together after the game. I'm sorry to trouble you on such a hot day. Haha, don't be so polite. It's our honor to play with you, Uncle Jean said with a smile. No, it's necessary to treat. When we play basketball, victory is secondary. Friendship comes first. After the game, having a meal together won't affect your other things, right? Deng Jian deserved to be the captain of the University of Guangdong Polytechnic University. His words and actions made people feel very comfortable. Okay. Uncle Jean looked at Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit smiled and nodded. He then said, After the game, let's have a meal together. I'll treat you. Don't fight with me. The people here are not poor. You have to pay for it. Right. You said that playing basketball is about friendship. If you keep talking about money with me, it will hurt our friendship. Deng Jian laughed heartily. I won't mention it. Thank you in advance, Uncle Jean. He paused and then said, You also know that we still have to play games after school starts. If we get injured, it will affect the game. So, on the court later, please be merciful. The main thing is that everyone has to have fun. Don't worry, we won't do too much. But you have to be merciful. We are a few old bones, and we can't withstand the vitality of young people like you. Uncle Jean laughed. Well, friendship comes first. Deng Jian clenched his fist and smiled. After he left, Uncle Jean said to Poplar Fruit with emotion, their captain is a character. He has a good family education. It's amazing if he doesn't play basketball in the future. Poplar Fruit looked at Uncle Jean in confusion and asked, why do you say that? What do you think he wanted to say to me just now? Uncle Jean patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and asked with a smile. Didn't he say about the meal? Poplar Fruit frowned and asked. Suddenly, Yongguo reacted first and said with a sudden realization, oh, I understand. He wants us to not hurt their players when we play basketball. So that's his real purpose. That's right. Uncle Jean nodded approvingly. You understand quite quickly. He just beat around the bush and said so much just to talk about this. But he said it very skillfully, right? You don't feel that it's harsh when you hear it. Poplar Fruit nodded. Indeed, Deng Jian's way of doing things made people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. It was easy to feel that he was a very worthy friend. You can learn from his good points. Uncle Jean educated Poplar Fruit like an elder. He smiled and said, someone in his family should be a leader, so he has been influenced by this. His words and actions are very methodical. Well, I understand. Poplar Fruit nodded solemnly. This was just a small interlude. Both sides were ready. Poplar Fruit and Deng Jian walked to the center circle to prepare for the jump ball. An uncle, who was acting as a guest referee, walked to the center with the basketball. The audience on the sidelines held their breaths and looked at them nervously. The battle was about to start. Chapter 75. Deng Jian's position on the school team was actually not the center, but the point guard. There were some players on the school team who were taller than him. However, the only center on the court, Zhang Jia, was not as tall as Poplar Fruit, so he was the one who played the jump ball. Although Poplar Fruit was half a head shorter than Deng Jian did not dare to relax at all. He had heard from Enziming about Poplar Fruit's abnormal jump. With a whistle, the referee threw the basketball high into the air, and the game began. So what if he is 10 centimeters taller than me? Poplar Fruit confidently jumped more than a meter high, and under Deng Jian's surprised gaze, the basketball was in Uncle Ban's hands. Although Deng Jian was mentally prepared, he was still shocked by Poplar Fruit's jump. The highest point of his jump was actually 2 palms higher than him. What a monster! Before Deng Jian landed on the ground, he shouted, "Defend!" Poplar Fruit did not need to shout. Several of his teammates had already rushed to the opponent's half of the court. However, the quick attack did not succeed. After all, the opponent was the school team of Guangdong University of Technology. Seeing that the fight for the ball was not going well, the 3 players who had retreated early had already formed a defensive formation. Uncle Ban's idea of scoring quickly was extinguished. Since the quick attack was not going to work, they would play positional play. Uncle Ban saw that someone was closing in on him, so he passed the ball to Song Jiwen to control. At this time, the others returned to their positions. Poplar Fruit also stood outside the 3-second zone to provide support. Song Jiwen dribbled the ball twice. Seeing that he could not fool Chiozine, who was guarding him, he passed the ball to Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit was ready to attack with the ball, but from the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of Dong Xiaofang, who had just guarded Uncle Ban, running over to attack him with Enziming. Poplar Fruit was happy. Taking the initiative to leave the ball? All right, I'll fulfill your wishes. Without waiting for Deng Jian to realize that something was wrong, Poplar Fruit acted like he was protecting the ball for a layup. He placed his right hand on the side of his body and squeezed Enziming into the lane, looking like he was going to make a layup. Dong Xiaofang and Enziming hurriedly used their forehands to form a big hat on Poplar Fruit's head. However, they discovered that Poplar Fruit's right hand was empty. Where was the ball? When he turned around, he saw that Uncle Dao had already received the basketball. He calmly made a 45-degree jump shot, and the basketball steadily went into the basket. Team Jinli scored first. The crowd cheered. They had seen Poplar Fruit's feint clearly. That pass without looking behind to deceive the two opponents was just too cool. Kitten also stood up and clapped desperately. Only Zhang Yujie, who didn't know much about basketball, was a little confused. Beautiful pass. Uncle Dao gave Poplar Fruit a thumbs up. Poplar Fruit also gave him a thumbs up and said, beautiful shot too. Although they were talking, they didn't stay idle. They quickly retreated with the rest of the team. They didn't have much experience in games, but they still understood that it was important to switch between offense and defense quickly in a game. Dong Xiaofeng ran to the end line with an embarrassed look on his face. He passed the ball into the hands of Deng Jiyan, who was still staring at him. He didn't need to be scolded by the captain. He also understood that he had missed the ball. It was the school team's turn to attack. Deng Jiyan acted as the point guard. Song Jiwen, who was guarding him, looked helpless. Deng Jiyan was too tall. Song Jiwen was only about 1.75 meters tall, which was 20 centimeters shorter than Deng Jiyan. As long as Deng Jiyan raised his hand, he couldn't touch the ball at all. Poplar Fruit also saw his friend's predicament. He stood near the lane and shouted, "Mosquito, just interfere with his shooting. If he wants to break through, let him in." However, Deng Jiyan passed the ball to Dong Xiaofeng. Dong Xiaofeng, who was eager to make up for his mistakes, started to juggle in front of Mr. Dao. All kinds of elegant and strange dribbling movements dazzled Mr. Dao. The audience couldn't help but applaud for his opponent. Dong Xiaofeng's two feints deceived Mr. Dao. He left Mr. Dao 2 body positions behind, and then stopped for a jump shot. His shot was much more difficult than Mr. Dao's. This kind of rapid breaking and jumping up required a lot of knees. However, Dong Xiaofeng was able to control these movements very well. His shot also went in. The defense wasn't good enough. They could only attack. Poplar Fruit passed the ball to Song Jiwen, and then quickly ran to the opponent's half of the court. There was still no way to make a fast attack. The opponent had already retreated and stood in position. Song Jiwen was helpless against Deng Jiyan's defense. He had to pass the ball to Mr. Ban, and let him control the ball. Then he ran with Mr. Dao. Deng Jiyan didn't follow. Instead, he gestured for Qiu Xin and the others to switch at any time. In a one-on-one match, their strength was generally stronger than Song Jiwen and Mr. Dao. The effect was the same no matter who was guarding. But was it really like this? In one run, Song Jiwen squeezed Dong Xiaofeng and ran to an empty spot. Qiu Xin was about to switch over when he suddenly found that he hit a wall. He looked up and saw that it was Poplar Fruit. When did he run over? Even Enziming didn't notice Poplar Fruit's block. This was just the tacit understanding between Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen after many years of playing. Mr. Ban just passed the ball over. Song Jiwen received the ball, took 2 more steps inside, and then shot. The basketball grazed the white line of the backboard, and then refracted into the frame. "Cheer up," Deng Jiyan said to his teammates as he dribbled the ball to the opponent's half of the court. He was very dissatisfied with the coordination of his opponents twice. Dong Xiaofeng's point could completely turn Mr. Dao into a sieve, but Deng Jiyan didn't continue to let Dong Xiaofeng attack. He made a move to lure Song Jiwen to jump, and then easily bypassed Song Jiwen, and slanted into the inside line. Poplar Fruit came up to meet him, and the two people collided solidly. Muscles and muscles made a dull collision sound. Deng Jiyan was shocked. He was completely at a disadvantage in the wrestling with Poplar Fruit. The moment they collided, he felt like he had hit a mountain. Poplar Fruit didn't move, but he staggered back a step. However, after all, Deng Jiyan was experienced. When he retreated, he made an incredible move. He passed the basketball through Poplar Fruit's crotch, hit the ground, and the ball fell into Zhang Jie's hands. His crotch was pierced. Poplar Fruit didn't have time to be depressed. Zhang Jie, with his huge strength advantage, successfully squeezed past the community team's second inside uncle, and then scored with a hook. Poplar Fruit's team scored a lot, but it seemed that the opponents had an easier time scoring. Except for Poplar Fruit, the others were almost destroyed when they faced off. Song Jiwen and Deng Jiyan, needless to say, the gap was too big. Mr. Dao was up against Dong Xiaofang. Dong Xiaofang's speed and flexibility were completely unable to keep up with Uncle Dao's age. As long as Dong Xiaofang wanted to break through, Mr. Dao couldn't stop him at all. On the outside line, Mr. Ban was up against Qiu Xin. Mr. Ban wasn't the main attacker, and neither was Qiu Xin, but it seemed that Qiu Xin had a better chance of winning. After all, Mr. Ban was Poplar Fruit's weakest link. Mr. Dao was not as tall as Zhang Jie, and even his strength, which he was most proud of, was far behind. Zhang Jie was a strength maniac, and probably only Poplar Fruit could compete with him. Finally, there was Poplar Fruit and Enzyming. The two of them had fought last time. Although Poplar Fruit was better than Enzyming, his strength was only 10% or 20% higher. It seemed that it was difficult to make up for the gap created by the others. Although the score was the same now, as long as Poplar Fruit's team didn't score when they attacked, the score would definitely be pulled apart. That's right, such a situation had already happened. In a new round of attack, Mr. Dao ran out of space again, but Dong Xiaofang rushed over to interfere. Mr. Dao couldn't shoot, and Poplar Fruit, who had just run outside to block, couldn't get the rebound. When it came to defense, the community team couldn't stop Mr. Dao at all. Mr. Dao was shaken off by Dong Xiaofang again, and again he made a jump shot, and the community team fell behind by 2 points. In another round, Mr. Dao couldn't get the hook under the basket with Poplar Fruit's help to block Zhang Jie. Poplar Fruit got the rebound, but when he passed to the outside, he made a mistake. Dong Xiaofang appeared like lightning and intercepted Poplar Fruit's pass. They immediately attacked quickly. Deng Jiyan, who was far ahead, received a long pass from Dong Xiaofang. After crossing the free throw line, he took 3 steps, jumped high, and dunked with both hands. Song Jiwen couldn't keep up with Deng Jiyan's footsteps. He could only watch from behind as his clothes fluttered in the air. Although it was someone else who scored, Deng Jiyan's domineering dunk with both hands was too explosive. Suddenly, it ignited the enthusiasm of both the court and the audience, and all of them applauded. Even Poplar Fruit couldn't help but sigh. The opponent's morale was completely stimulated by this dunk. Sure enough, in the next 5 minutes, Poplar Fruit's team was almost beaten to the point that they couldn't fight back. Except for Poplar Fruit, the other 4 were all beaten into sieves. On the offensive side, except for Mr. Dao, who made a 2-point shot, and Poplar Fruit, who made a 3-point shot during the fast attack, the others were all silenced. This included Mr. Dao, mainly because Dong Xiaofang interfered with him too much. He was the kind of player who could score when no one was guarding him, and he could only rely on luck when there was someone guarding him. With interference, it was normal that he couldn't score. With a score of 20-9, Poplar Fruit's team had to call for a timeout. Although there were less than 3 minutes before halftime, they played 2 10-minute first and second halves. They couldn't be bombarded like this. If it went on like this, they would directly surrender without playing in the second half. Off the court, Feng politely handed them towels and mineral water. Mr. Ban, who was desperately drinking water, suddenly said, "Feng, you can play for me later." Everyone looked at Uncle Ban in surprise. He smiled and explained while panting, Feng is better than me. With him around, you guys will have an extra point to score goals. Besides, I'm tired from running around just now. I'm old, and I can't take it after playing for so long." He and Song Jiwen could be said to be the 2 most tired people on the court. Every time they retreated because they were on the outside, in order to not let the opponent's fast attack, they had to rush back to their positions desperately. When they attacked, they also had to spend energy to control the ball. After all, Song Jiwen was young and could still hold on, but Mr. Ban looked at him sweating like rain. He really couldn't hold on for long. Mr. Dao nodded and said, "Okay, Mr. Ban, you can take a break off the court now." In the second half, "We'll probably have to replace you when we're tired." Mr. Dao said, "Feng, come up. Why don't you let Feng defend against their Dong Xiaofang? Feng's footsteps are faster, and he'll probably defend better than me. It shouldn't be a problem for me to defend against that Qiu Xin." Feng agreed. "That's a good suggestion. Let's do it." Mr. Dao then turned his head and said, "Xiao Yang, you see the situation later. If there's no particularly good opportunity, don't pass the ball when you're attacking. You can play as much as possible. As you can see on our side, probably only you can open it. Poplar Fruit nodded with a solemn expression. Now he was the district team's spear. Whether they could tear apart the opponent's impregnable defense depended on him. Chapter 76. When the game started again, Afong served the ball from the center line to Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit dribbled the ball and walked to the top of the three-point line. The others pulled him away. Even Uncle Jean retreated to the corner. Below the stage, Zheng Yujie nervously held onto her umbrella. She had already stood up to cheer for Yangguo a few times, but she still couldn't turn the tide. Seeing Poplar Fruit having such a hard time, she was secretly worried even though she didn't know much about basketball. His teammates pulled their opponents away. Only Enziming was left in front of Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit looked at Enziming, who was half-bent and had tense muscles. He dribbled the ball twice and suddenly started to move. With the ball in his right hand, he broke through to Enziming's left side. Enziming didn't move at first. He judged that Poplar Fruit might be faking it. But his judgment was wrong. Poplar Fruit really squeezed to his left side. Seeing that he was about to be broken through, Enziming quickly followed. He knew how fast Poplar Fruit was after he started. So in order to catch up with Poplar Fruit, he almost gritted his teeth and rushed back with all his strength. He caught up. Enziming was overjoyed. He couldn't believe it because he knew that his speed was not on the same level as Poplar Fruit's. Yes, he really shouldn't believe it because Poplar Fruit was just luring him to catch up. Before he could get close, Poplar Fruit suddenly retreated. With one back and forth, the two of them instantly pulled apart the distance between them. Poplar Fruit just calmly flicked his wrist and threw the basketball out. It almost didn't even jump. When the basketball fell from the net, Enziming just managed to stabilize his body. He didn't give the others time to react and defend. Brother Yang is beautiful. Little Kitten in the audience applauded desperately. Zheng Yujie, who didn't know how to appreciate it, was a little confused and asked, "Why are you so excited? Aren't there still a lot of points to go?" That's because Brother Yang's step-back shot was very nice. In fact, the score doesn't matter. Playing against the school team of Guangdong University of Technology, they are already prepared to lose. Kitten explained. Is the school team of Guangdong University of Technology very good? As a child who grew up in Beijing, Zheng Yujie had never heard of such a name. She only knew two famous universities in Guangdong province. She asked in confusion, who is better, they or the Huan team? Huan team? What Huan team? Kitten asked in confusion. Beijing Huan team? Haven't you heard of it? My brother and sister are their fans, Zheng Yujie said. I'm going to faint. Are you talking about the Beijing Hua and team that plays soccer? Kitten patted his forehead exaggeratedly and asked speechlessly. A soccer player? Ahahaha, alright. Let's watch the match. Zheng Yujie laughed awkwardly and quickly changed the topic. While they were talking, the school team made another attack. Their captain passed the ball to Dong Xiaofeng. This time, Dong Xiaofeng encountered Afong, who was guarding him closely. Although Afong was not as tall as Dong Xiaofeng, his body was very close to Dong Xiaofeng. This made Dong Xiaofeng, who didn't like physical contact, very uncomfortable. After trying twice to turn around, Dong Xiaofeng had to pass the ball to Enziming, who stretched out his hand for the ball. Just now, Enziming let Poplar Fruit score, and he was ready to return the ball. However, he was still the same as before. He couldn't squeeze past the seemingly thin but powerful Poplar Fruit. In the end, he reluctantly made a move. Under the interference of Poplar Fruit, he actually scored. Poplar Fruit looked at his finger gloomily. Just now, his middle finger touched the basketball and changed the original trajectory of the ball. The ball rolled into the basket so beautifully. Maybe if he didn't touch it, it wouldn't have been able to get in. But it was useless to be upset. This time, Poplar Fruit received the ball and began to charge like a madman in the half-court. Enziming, who was still standing on the ground, was forcefully squeezed past by Poplar Fruit. In the end, Poplar Fruit knocked away Deng Jian, who came up to fill in the defense and did a layup. The difference was reduced to 9 points again. Deng Jian rubbed his chest and looked at Enziming helplessly. He was 195 meters tall and weighed 120 kilograms, but he was easily knocked away by Poplar Fruit. Deng Jian looked as if nothing had happened after he landed, but Enziming's chest was in pain. Deng Jian took the ball, shook his head and said, "You're right. This is simply inhuman strength. I wonder who's stronger, Master Ji or him. It's probably enough. Master Ji doesn't give me as much pressure as him." Enziming finished and ran to the opposite side. Deng Jian still didn't attack. He passed the ball to Qiuzin. Qiuzin passed the ball to Zhang Jie, but Poplar Fruit quickly stood nearby. As long as Zhang Jie dared to attack, Poplar Fruit dared to give him a big hat. Under Poplar Fruit's covetous gaze, Zhang Jie passed the ball again. Dong Xiaofeng received the ball and shot, but he didn't make the shot. Poplar Fruit grabbed the rebound. This was a good opportunity to chase after points. It was too late to attack quickly. The opponent was at a disadvantage in the previous round. This time they retreated very quickly. However, Poplar Fruit still attacked unreasonably with the ball. This time, he chose Dong Xiaofeng as the breakthrough point. Of course, Dong Xiaofeng couldn't defend against Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit didn't use any fancy moves. He directly accelerated and squeezed Dong Xiaofeng away. Although Dong Xiaofeng was afraid of physical contact, he wouldn't give up so easily. He gritted his teeth and followed behind Poplar Fruit, waiting for an opportunity to block him. Enziming appeared in front of Poplar Fruit. He stood firm, opened his hands, and blocked Poplar Fruit's attack route. Poplar Fruit wasn't afraid. He jumped toward Enziming. Enziming also jumped. His hands interfered in front of Poplar Fruit's eyes. In order to block Poplar Fruit, Dong Xiaofeng also jumped high. His right hand reached above Poplar Fruit's head. Poplar Fruit raised his hand, but the ball was gone. Enziming and Dong Xiaofeng were stunned. "Where's the ball?" "Right, where's the ball?" Wasn't Poplar Fruit holding it? No, the ball was now in the hands of Ah Feng, who was 2 meters behind Dong Xiaofeng. Deng Jian saw it clearly. When Poplar Fruit jumped, his right hand passed the ball to his left hand. His right hand was still raised, but his left hand threw the ball out from under his crotch. Poplar Fruit knew that Dong Xiaofeng also jumped, so the ball bounced under Dong Xiaofeng's feet and fell into Ah Feng's hands. Although Deng Jian saw it clearly, he didn't have time to defend. He was too far away. Although it was a bit unbelievable for Feng to get the ball, he quickly reacted and decisively shot the ball. The ball steadily went into the basket. 22-15. The difference was reduced to 7 points. Poplar Fruit is really strong. Deng Jian finally recognized Poplar Fruit's strength. He knew that if he was the one handling the ball, he wouldn't be able to do it as well as Poplar Fruit. Yang Guo had caught on to Dong Xiaofeng's mentality from the start and purposely lured him into a trap. This wasn't difficult, but the difficult part was Yang Guo's pass. How did he do it with his back facing them without looking? How was he able to pass through 2 people's crotches in the air? Furthermore, how was he able to pass to his teammate so accurately? Could it be that his vision was so wide? That's right. Poplar Fruit's vision was wider than most people. When he jumped, he saw Ah Feng's position. When he jumped, he had simulated the 3D image of the 4 of them in his mind. Then, he judged the angle and strength of his shot based on this. To be able to do it so accurately, it wasn't a fluke. The first half ended quickly, and there was a 5-minute break. Poplar Fruit and the others quickly went to the sidelines to drink water. As for the school team, Uncle Jean had asked someone to buy a box of water before entering. They didn't need to be told, as they also needed to take a break. At this time, the restless Zhang Yujie came up and patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder. She wiped the sweat off her hand, but she didn't care. She said loudly, "Little Poplar Fruit, you played well just now. I think highly of you. Good luck." Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked at her and didn't know what to say. He could only ask her, "Do you guys want to drink water?" After saying that, he handed 2 bottles of water to her. Zhang Yujie didn't hesitate. She took one bottle and pointed to the other bottle. "Open it for me." Poplar Fruit unscrewed the cap for her. She took a sip and said, "Well, not bad." The weather is too hot. I'm so thirsty sitting there. At this time Uncle Jean came up and smiled. Little Yang this is? Zhang Yujie said first. I'm his boss. It's nice to meet everyone. Her aura overshadowed Poplar Fruits, but if one didn't listen to what she said, one might think that she was declaring Poplar Fruit's sovereignty. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly and said, When did you become my boss? Although he did use the word boss when he introduced Zhang Yujie to Song Jiwen, in his heart, he didn't think of her as a boss. And strictly speaking, they only had a temporary contractual relationship. She couldn't be considered a boss yet. Zhang Yujie was just a small interlude. 5 minutes passed quickly, and the second half began. Since the score was getting closer, Deng Jian did not plan to make a move. After half the court, he passed the ball to Enziming. This time, he mainly wanted to let his team members get some training. If he made a move and the score difference was too big, this game would be meaningless. Enziming practiced cross-dribbling in front of Poplar Fruit, but Poplar Fruit didn't move, so he didn't force Poplar Fruit and transferred the ball to Qiuzin. Qiuzin didn't feel much pressure facing Uncle Dao's defense. It was just that his shooting wasn't good. He missed a mid-range shot before, so he was just making passes for others. This time, Uncle Dao's defense was a little lax, and Qiuzin seized the opportunity. He changed directions and bypassed Uncle Dao. And Uncle Jean, the last line of defense, was also firmly blocked by Zhang Jie. Seeing him drive in, he stood up easily and flipped his left wrist. The basketball flew to the basket. Got it. Qiuzin was happy. At this time his eyelids suddenly twitched. A huge shadow flew from the right side. Poplar Fruit got rid of Enziming and jumped high. Before the basketball flew to the highest point, Poplar Fruit slapped it away. Qiuzin was shocked. Poplar Fruit could jump so high? In the past, except for a few professional players, only the captain had reached this height. But wasn't Poplar Fruit 10 centimeters shorter than the captain? The basketball was slapped out, but it didn't fly directly out of the court. Instead it was picked up by Uncle Dao. Deng Jian shouted, Return to defense. They immediately ran to their own half of the court, not giving Poplar Fruit a chance to make a quick attack. This was the tactical quality of Guangdong's top university team. Since this was the case, Poplar Fruit still held the ball and attacked. But this time he encountered the opposite side's tight defense. Enziming followed Poplar Fruit closely, and Dong Xiaofeng was waiting nearby. Qiuzin switched to guard against Afeng, and Deng Jian stood between Song Jiwen and Uncle Dao. He was tall and had long arms. No matter who received the ball, he could defend in time. What to do? If he attacked, he was bound to be attacked by Enziming and Dong Xiaofeng. If he passed the ball, his teammates had no chance to score, and it was very likely that they would lose the ball. Poplar Fruit was in a dilemma. Chapter 77. When Poplar Fruit was caught in a two-man pincer attack, his first thought was to look for his teammates. This could be considered his habit of thinking as a point guard in school. But what disappointed him was that his teammates, except for Afeng, were all standing straight in place. They didn't run to open up space. In fact, this couldn't be blamed on them. After all, they were all workers. Although they exercised regularly and their physical fitness didn't fall behind, they still couldn't be compared to those students who played basketball seriously. After playing for more than 10 minutes and running back and forth dozens of times, how could they not be tired? Looking at Uncle Dao and Uncle Jean, the two of them were already sweating profusely. Their hands were on their knees as they gasped for breath. It looked like they couldn't attack anymore. Even Song Jiwen, who had just left school for a little over a year, was sweating profusely. In order to conserve a bit of energy for defense, he did not hesitate to stand at a position close to the center of the three-point line at a 45-degree angle. Although Afeng was still very energetic, he was followed closely by Qiuzin like a sticky candy. He couldn't get rid of him. If he was given a one-on-one, he probably wouldn't stand a chance. Attack by himself? This wasn't easy. Currently, the opponent was in a two-man pincer attack. Even if he could really break through these two people, Zhang Jie would definitely make up for it. Then, as long as he held him back, he would be trapped in a three-man pincer attack. What should I do? Poplar Fruit dribbled the ball and stood outside the three-point line thinking. And Ziming, who was closest to him, stood inside the three-point line, about a step away from the free throw line. Poplar Fruit's eyes lit up. He suddenly took a step back and jumped when he was still 2 steps away from the three-point line. And Ziming was shocked and rushed to jump over, but he was at least 1 meter away from Poplar Fruit. He stretched out his right hand, but he couldn't even reach Poplar Fruit's face. Poplar Fruit's wrist flicked gently. The basketball drew a beautiful parabola and went into the basket. Poplar Fruit's super long three-point shot. He could even enter like this. Dong Xiaofeng felt a little incredulous. His three-point shot could be said to be the best among the 5 members of the school team. Even if it was him, if he suddenly shot while standing 2 steps away from the three-point line, he was sure that he would miss in such a hurry. Yang Guo, on the other hand, was very confident in his long-range three-point shot. He knew that his wrist strength was very strong. This distance wasn't difficult for him. His shooting sense was even more accurate than normal people's. It was as if he already knew what kind of angle and what kind of strength he should use when he took off. With this kind of talent, which was obtained through cultivation, Poplar Fruit was very confident that he could shoot the ball from any position within the center line without anyone guarding him. Deng Jian couldn't sit still any longer. Friendship was the most important thing, and winning or losing wasn't important. However, if he didn't do anything when he was leading by 11 points, then he would be playing with fire. This time he didn't pass the ball. Instead, he held the ball and shook it a little. He pointed at Song Jiwen, then took a step to the left and easily hit the mid-range shot. The gap was once again widened to 6 points. Poplar Fruit had a headache because it was too easy for the opponent to score. The small district team's defense was full of holes. Even if he was a god, it was impossible for him to take care of every position. Every time he attacked, he had to put in a lot of effort. He had to fight a battle of wits and courage with a few of the opposing defenders. Even the physical confrontation was very intense. Only then could he barely score a few points. If this went on, if he missed even once, all his previous efforts would be wasted. However, even so, what could he do? In the end, the gap between their strength was too big. However, Poplar Fruit would not admit defeat so easily. Even if I'm the only one who can fight, I'll try my best to turn the tide. Even if you're an iron wall, I'll poke a big hole in it. Even if I lose, I'll let you see how good we are. In the face of a strong opponent, Poplar Fruit's fighting spirit was aroused again. Poplar Fruit's long three-pointer just now scared the opponent. As a result, Dong Xiaofeng followed him when he received the ball from the front court, preventing him from suddenly making a long shot. However, this result was what Poplar Fruit wanted to see, or it was exactly what he expected. If both Ziming and Dong Xiaofeng were within the three-point line, it would be difficult for Poplar Fruit to break through the two of them at the same time. However, now that Dong Xiaofeng followed, the battle line was suddenly stretched. That meant that he fell into Poplar Fruit's trap. Just after half of the court, Poplar Fruit suddenly accelerated. Dong Xiaofeng was caught off guard and was left behind. And Ziming was shocked and quickly went up to meet him. As Poplar Fruit rushed forward at high speed, he made a move to break through to the right. And Ziming judged that Poplar Fruit must have made a move. Under such inertia, it was impossible for an ordinary person to change direction. Therefore, he gritted his teeth and moved to the left. He was mentally prepared to use his body to meet Poplar Fruit, who could not stop in time. However, was Poplar Fruit an ordinary person? Of course not. Poplar Fruit was able to use his left leg as an axis and hook the ball back to him with his right hand at such a fast speed. Then he turned his body and continued to accelerate to the backboard with this inertia. Although he said so much, Poplar Fruit's feints and turns happened in a flash. Almost no one on the court could react in time. Even Zhang Jie, who was standing under the basket, could only watch as Poplar Fruit's right hand hooked and made a successful layup. Deng Jian and the others who were familiar with the NBA only had one name left in their minds: Tony Parker. Parker, the little French sports car of the Spurs. Wasn't Yangguo's breakthrough and turn for a layup Parker's signature move? Although it was a simple move, not many people could really learn it. This was because the physical talent required for this move was too high. Many people could only grasp the form after learning it. Even if they broke through to the basket, they could not avoid the fate of having to eat hot pot. However, Poplar Fruit's series of moves just now really stunned everyone on the school team. With this move, Poplar Fruit could look down on everyone on the school team, including the professional players. Of course, only people who understood Poplar Fruit's strength could understand. Zheng Yujie, who was on the sidelines, was clapping blindly. She had no idea why everyone was so excited. The school team's offense still avoided Poplar Fruit's defense. This time, Poplar Fruit changed to mark Deng Jian. However, Deng Jian was smart enough to pass the ball to Zhang Jie inside the three-point line. Zhang Jie easily avoided Uncle Jin and hooked the ball into the basket. There were still 4 minutes left, but this time, the community team was exhausted. Only Ah Feng followed Poplar Fruit to rush to the opponent's half of the court. Song Jiwen only ran to the center line. Poplar Fruit gritted his teeth. He still had to do it himself. He got the ball and rushed up. This time, Deng Jian also marked him. He switched with Enzyming to see if Poplar Fruit was really that invincible. Deng Jian guarding against Poplar Fruit was definitely a wrong choice. Although Deng Jian was the strongest player on their team, his 1.95-meter height determined that his footsteps were far less agile than Dong Xiaofang's. Even Dong Xiaofang could not keep up with Poplar Fruit's footsteps. How could he guard against Poplar Fruit? Poplar Fruit only made 2 super-fast changes in direction, and Deng Jian gave up his position. Poplar Fruit easily bypassed him. Qiu Xin and Dong Xiaofang came from the left and right, but Poplar Fruit accelerated again. The moment they formed the encirclement, he suddenly sidestepped and passed through the middle. At that moment, Poplar Fruit's speed was like the wind. They could feel it, but they could not catch it. After the two, there was also Enzyming. Enzyming had returned to the free throw line when Deng Jian was entangled with Poplar Fruit. Seeing Poplar Fruit break through, he quickly filled in. Poplar Fruit was not afraid. He jumped to meet him, and Enzyming also jumped in the air. Poplar Fruit bent like a prawn, holding the basketball in his arms. He leaned on Enzyming's chest and turned his body in the air, bypassing Enzyming. Enzyming, of course, was not the school team's last line of defense. After Poplar Fruit bypassed him, a burly figure appeared in front of him. Zhang Jie. Zhang Jie did not jump high, but he was confident that he could stop Poplar Fruit, because Poplar Fruit jumped much earlier than him. But when he jumped to the highest point, he was surprised to find that Poplar Fruit was still rushing up. Not only that, Poplar Fruit's bent body suddenly straightened, like a spring, and rose a little higher. Then, Poplar Fruit raised the basketball with his right hand, and pressed his left hand on Zhang Jie's shoulder. His whole body leaned back slightly like a fish diving to the top. Separated by Zhang Jie, his right hand heavily dunked the basketball into the basket. He hung on the basket with one hand and looked down at Zhang Jie, who staggered to stand firm on the ground, like a king looking down on the world. Was he judged by Enzyming? Zhang Jie's face was incredulous, but he was shocked beyond words. This kind of situation had never happened in the school team. He now felt powerless in front of Poplar Fruit. He was too strong. The one who felt it the most was Enzyming, who was lucky not to have been selected by Yang Guo. He had just jumped together with Yang Guo, but Yang Guo had bypassed him, and was still able to do such a move. With such a tyrannical jump and body, Yang Guo was not even a professional footballer. Enzyming felt that his worldview had been challenged. Needless to say, the audience had already cheered when they saw Poplar Fruit's domineering dunk. The game in front was too oppressive. The community team did not have the strength to fight back at first, which made them very depressed. But Poplar Fruit not only slowly closed the gap, but also made such an explosive dunk that surpassed 5 people in a row. The onlookers could not stay calm. Not only did they applaud, but they also whistled. This time, even Zheng Yujie, who did not know how to appreciate Poplar Fruit, was shocked by his slam dunk. All of a sudden, the only thing left in her mind was the image of Poplar Fruit hanging high in the basket. It was really too manly. Zheng Yujie's eyes were now full of little stars. Her estrogen was secreted to the extreme. She could not wait to pull down the handsome and domineering man on the court immediately. Although the game still had more than 2 minutes to end, the result was already very obvious. Although Poplar Fruit was invincible when attacking, they could not stop the school team's attack at all. The two sides could only fight a tug-of-war. In the end, the gap remained at 4 points. In the next two defenses, they saw the power of the captain of Guangdong University of Technology's school team. Maybe he was inspired by Poplar Fruit's dunk. With Enziming's help, Deng Jian completed a two-handed split dunk with an alley-oop relay and a self-steal dunk. Both plays were very cool and bloody. Although it was not as wonderful as Poplar Fruit's slam dunk that surpassed 5 people in a row, the onlookers in Jinli community were not stingy with their applause. Although they lost the game, as said at the beginning, winning or losing was not important. What was important was that the game was played well. And that was enough. Basketball matters were settled on the basketball court. After the game, they became good friends again. After the game was over, the group of people, led by Uncle Jean, drove to a big restaurant near the community. Chapter 78. Song Jiwen pushed open the door and entered with the sound of keys clinking. The bedroom door was closed, but Poplar Fruit's roar came from the half-closed door of the study. How many times have I told you? You have to translate in natural language. Don't think of yourself as a translation machine. You have to be flexible, do you understand? Look at your dry translation. I think Gu Ji's translation is better than yours. Song Jiwen shook his head and put the lunchbox in his hand on the dining table. Then he walked to the study and knocked on the door. Guozi, I've put the lunch on the table. Hurry up and eat it. Don't let it get cold. Poplar Fruit shouted into the microphone in his headset and made an okay gesture to Song Jiwen. He didn't even have time to say thank you. Song Jiwen didn't mind. He was used to this kind of situation. He waved his hand and went back to his room. After Zheng Yujie went back, Poplar Fruit received the first draft of the book, which was more than 200 pages long. Unlike the other 3 translators, Poplar Fruit received the first batch of original manuscripts from the United States. Because he was the consultant and final reviewer of the entire team, he had to read all the manuscripts. In less than 2 days, Zheng Yujie told everyone in the group that the foreign copyright owner had notified more than 30 publishing houses in different countries and regions around the world. The book's release date was brought forward from March 6, 2012 to November 21, 2011. It felt like there was still plenty of time, but it suddenly became tight. In private, Zheng Yujie asked Poplar Fruit if they wanted to add 2 more translators. Poplar Fruit didn't hesitate and directly rejected the suggestion. Adding more translators meant more uncontrollable things. However, if they didn't add more translators, everyone would be assigned more tasks. Of course, the burden on Poplar Fruit's shoulders would be heavier. Every day, not only did he have to translate the manuscripts within his scope of responsibility, but he also had to collect the manuscripts of the other 3 translators to review and edit. Usually, he had to stay online and respond to the team members' questions at any time. He also had to hold online meetings with them every day to point out the shortcomings of their translations in the past day. Usually, Poplar Fruit was a modest and gentle person. However, this time as the leader of the 4-person translation team, Poplar Fruit turned into a demon king. He was just like those famous movie directors. As long as he caught a repeat mistake, you'd have to wait to be roared at by him. Every time the team members had a meeting, they were trembling with fear. They were afraid of being roared at by Poplar Fruit. Even if they were separated by thousands of miles on the internet, Poplar Fruit's curses would still rain down on them. 2 of them were Ph.D.s and one of them was a graduate student who had studied abroad. In terms of academic qualifications, Poplar Fruit couldn't compare. In terms of age, they were also older than Poplar Fruit. In the beginning, they were very dissatisfied with Dongxin Publishing's arrangement. When Poplar Fruit criticized their translations, they secretly criticized him. However, after more than half a month of cooperation, Poplar Fruit convinced them with his superb translation skills and profound knowledge. There was nothing to say about the former. After all, compared to them, Poplar Fruit could be considered a professional translator. However, the latter was different. Every time they asked Poplar Fruit a question, Poplar Fruit could answer it quickly. Many of the questions couldn't even be found on the internet. However, Poplar Fruit was like an omnipotent encyclopedia. As long as it was a question in a book, he could answer it one by one. For example, when Steve Jobs was in high school, he once founded a club called Buck Fry Club. The translator who translated this paragraph couldn't figure out the meaning of the club's name. So he ran to Poplar Fruit to consult him. Poplar Fruit only thought for a moment before pointing out that Steve Jobs' name was actually a play on words. If the initials of the name were switched, it would reveal the hidden meaning of Fuck Bry Club. At that time, their high school principal's name was Warren Bry. After Poplar Fruit's miraculous answers several times, in addition to Tyrant, he also gained the nickname of Humanoid Valley Pigeon. In any case, the four-person team continued to translate amidst the bumps and bumps. Although Poplar Fruit still took their manuscripts for refinement every night, the progress of the three was obvious to all. At the very least, Poplar Fruit was no longer as tired as he was at the beginning. What made the three of them even more impressed was that although Poplar Fruit spent time every day correcting their manuscripts and guiding them during the translation process, he didn't neglect his own translation. Relying on his understanding of Steve Jobs and his mastery of English, Poplar Fruit's daily translation volume was still a little more than the two people who did the most. On August 25, Apple suddenly announced that Steve Jobs had resigned as Apple's CEO, and the board of directors appointed former Apple COO Tim Cook as the new CEO. Tim Cook would take over Steve Jobs' throne. Of course, Steve Jobs' resignation represented the end of an era. This was a self-evident fact, but it was also difficult for many people to accept this news. Poplar Fruit and the others were shocked. People were concerned about where Apple would go without SEC leader Joe, but Poplar Fruit and Jung Yujia saw something different from this news. SEC leader Joe's days were numbered. In fact, SEC leader Joe was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2003. Although he underwent surgery to remove the tumor in 2004, there were still hidden dangers in his body. The history of Apple's rise was also the history of SEC leader Joe's suffering from cancer. However, Apple's glory could not retain SEC leader Joe's health. SEC leader Joe's health was deteriorating day by day. Every time Apple launched an event, Poplar Fruit could see his body becoming thinner and his face pale. Even in 2009, when Steve Jobs went on sick leave for half a year, he didn't really resign as Apple's CEO. This time he actually put down the scepter of being the leader of Apple. This meant that his health was so bad that it was irreversible. Steve Jobs' life had entered the countdown. Poplar Fruit could almost hear the ticking of the clock, which also indicated that there was not much time left for Poplar Fruit and the others to translate. Poplar Fruit was like a clockwork machine, beginning to translate day and night. Poplar Fruit was now sitting in front of the computer, working nonstop in front of the computer. Apart from his routine exercise every morning, apart from taking care of Kiki when she woke up, and apart from eating and sleeping, he didn't even have time to cook. For lunch, he ate the buns he bought in the morning, and for dinner, he waited for Song Ji-wen to come back from work to pack for him. His original plan to go home had been cancelled. For the time being, he could only say sorry to his parents. When this was over, Poplar Fruit planned to go home and accompany them for a month to make up for his mistake of not returning home for more than half a year. To Poplar Fruit's relief, after a month of guidance and supervision, his team members had grown very quickly, especially Guan Yindian, who came back from studying abroad, but was not much older than Poplar Fruit. Not only did he translate a lot, almost half of the three of them, but his translation skills had also improved greatly. When Guan Yindian studied abroad in Australia, he majored in information technology. As a boy with a science and engineering background, he relied on his translation skills, which were honed by working in the subtitling team of American dramas for several months, to squeeze into the translation team led by Poplar Fruit this time. Indeed, in the beginning, he was the weakest in the team, and even reading thick manuscripts was very difficult. However, he was also the most serious and willing to spend the most time among the three of them. Every day, Poplar Fruit had to translate until late at night, because his body only needed 3 hours of rest to be refreshed. However, at 3 o'clock every night, Guan Yindian would come to him with questions. Guan Yindian's hard work dedication, and conscientiousness really touched him. In private, during breaks, Guan Yandian would take the initiative to discuss his translation experience with Poplar Fruit, and Poplar Fruit would often give him special treatment and train him very carefully. Every time Poplar Fruit had a meeting, he would say, "Steve Jobs is one of the greatest people in the last century, and even in this century. After his books are published, there will definitely be countless pairs of eyes watching. Now, every inadvertent mistake we make, every piece of information we miss, every word we misread will be infinitely magnified. If you don't want to be pointed at in the future, and if you don't want to be criticized by people all over the country, read it seriously, and don't miss a single detail." Every time Guan Yandian listened to Poplar Fruit's words very carefully, and these words were like a sharp knife hanging over his head, urging him to work harder and more seriously to translate. Although Poplar Fruit sometimes scolded him very harshly, the two of them still formed a deep friendship, and their academic pursuits made them appreciate each other even more. And under the guidance of Poplar Fruit, Guan Yandian really became the best translator in the translation team, second only to Poplar Fruit. As for later, he became the left and right arm of Poplar Fruit to establish his own foundation, but that is a matter for the future, and will not be mentioned here for the time being. On September 20th, Zheng Yujie went to Poplar Fruit with a dignified expression, and told him that they had received another 200 pages of the manuscript that the author had revised and added. With another 200 pages, Poplar Fruit and the others felt that their heads were about to explode. Previously, they had thought that it was just the original manuscript with more than 400 pages. According to their rough estimation, they would be able to complete the task perfectly according to the plan. But now, there were more than 200 pages, which was almost half of the original manuscript. How could they complete it? Did they have to make Poplar Fruit and the others stay up all night? Poplar Fruit felt particularly stressed, especially during the online video conference. When he saw the increasingly thin and pale faces of his team members, he frowned even more. After this bad news was announced, everyone mourned. The only girl in the team even pulled her hair, indicating that she couldn't take it anymore. Seeing that the other two were faintly reluctant, Guan Yandian gritted his teeth and said, "Boss, why don't you give me 100 pages? I can still handle it." However, Poplar Fruit didn't want him to desperately stay up all night to rush the manuscript. Not to mention whether his body could handle it or not. How good could the manuscript be when he was extremely exhausted? In the end, he still needed Poplar Fruit to revise it. Wouldn't that increase his workload? In that case, it would be better to let him translate from the beginning. After some discussion, Guan Yandian turned over another 40 pages of the manuscript, while the other two took 20 pages each. Poplar Fruit took over the remaining 120 pages. Although it was a bit much, Poplar Fruit felt that it was possible to finish it if he worked overtime and gritted his teeth. The translation team also entered the final sprint stage. Sect leader Qiao didn't have much time left, but their task was still so difficult. But at this moment, no one dared to slack off, because they weren't competing with themselves or the publisher. They were fighting together with the tenacious and unyielding sect leader Qiao against the impending Grim Reaper and the heavens. Chapter 79. Yang Guo wholeheartedly wanted to translate his first book, so that no one could find fault with him. Yang Guo was busy in his own house, but because of his sudden disappearance, some people were so worried that they couldn't eat or sleep. They looked like they were in a terrible fix. "How is it? Did you get in touch with Poplar Fruit?" Seeing the secretary open the door, Yao Dehua looked at her expectantly, hoping to get the information he wanted from her response. Unfortunately, the secretary shook her head gently. Seeing her like this, Yao Dehua sat back in disappointment. His whole body sank deeply into the back of the boss chair. He murmured, "How could this be? It shouldn't be." In August and September, Yao Dehua started the plan to expand his territory, and was very busy every day. Poplar Fruit didn't log into the Gold Translator's account. He didn't know such important news until more than half a month later. Not only did Poplar Fruit not log into the Gold Translator's account, but he couldn't even get through to his mobile phone. After not being able to contact Yanghua, Yao Dehua was dumbfounded when he held the phone. How could a person suddenly disappear from the face of the earth? The last time they met, Poplar Fruit gave Yao Dehua a very good impression. He was humble and polite, and his words and actions were methodical. The most important thing was that he was really very young. He was around 24 years old, and he was very knowledgeable. He was constantly improving. Even Yao Dehua, who often dealt with young talents, had never seen such an outstanding talent in decades. In time, Yao Dehua firmly believed that Poplar Fruit would grow into a generation of translation masters. If so, he would become a banner of the Cinda Translation Company. Of course, this would require the Cinda Translation Company to pay a certain price. However, to have a master translator in the company, how could Yao Dehua be stingy with such a small profit? But now, Yanghua didn't even say anything and disappeared. What was Yao Dehua supposed to do? The company was now at a critical juncture. Although Poplar Fruit wasn't the most important part, the disappearance of Poplar Fruit was still a big blow to Yao Dehua. The secretary had come over to inform him to attend a meeting with several deputy managers of the Jiangnan branch. However, he found that the meeting outline he had written yesterday had fallen into the car. It could be seen that the Poplar Fruit incident had disturbed his thoughts. Fortunately, Yao Dehua's memory was still good. He could basically remember the content of the meeting that he had originally planned. Before leaving, he instructed his secretary, "Continue to call him. Let me know if there's any news." The meeting lasted for an entire afternoon. When it was almost time to get off work, Yao Dehua walked out of the meeting room, exhausted. Back in the office, Yao Dehua looked at his secretary, who shook her head apologetically. "Still not working?" Yao Dehua asked with a frown. "Yes, the phone has always been turned off." The secretary nodded and said. Yao Dehua stroked his Mediterranean hairstyle and ordered his secretary, "Ask manager Wu to come to my office." Wu Pings received the notice and came to Yao Dehua's office. He gently knocked on the yellow solid wood door. After getting a response, he pushed the door open and entered. When he entered, he found that the entire office was filled with smoke. Yao Dehua was lying on the boss's chair, smoking. Several cigarette butts had been put out in the ashtray. He waved his hand and opened the window to let the wind blow away some of the smoke in the room. Wu Pings then sat down in front of Yao Dehua. He and Yao Dehua had been good friends for many years. He usually had to be careful in front of others, but he didn't have to worry about talking in private. He went straight to the point. "What's wrong? Or is it because of that poplar fruit?" Yao Dehua sighed. He put out the remaining half of the cigarette in his mouth in the ashtray and nodded. "His disappearance this time is very strange. President Yao, do you think that other companies sent him to mess with us?" Wu Pings touched his chin and said, "It can't be. What can they do by sending poplar fruit?" Yao Dehua shook his head and said, "Poplar fruit's value was reflected in the future. His joining and leaving now wouldn't have much impact on the Xinda Translation Company's plans." Yao Dehua didn't believe that other companies would send such an excellent person to him just for him to enjoy. It wasn't worth it. The last time Yao Dehua met Poplar Fruit, he had a very good impression of him. If Poplar Fruit was really a spy, then he was too good at acting. He could even fool an experienced person like Yao Dehua. Yao Dehua relied on his many years of experience in judging people. He still believed in Poplar Fruit's character. But this time's disappearance was too sudden and too strange. He really couldn't figure out what the reason was. "Forget it, President Yao, you don't have to worry too much about him. Let's wait a little longer. Maybe something happened at home and he can't get away." Wu Pings comforted Yao Dehua. Yao Dehua smiled gently and said, "Old Wu, don't you think I'm old and stubborn? Why can't I get rid of this habit after so many years? Every time I meet a talent, I'm worried. Even when I was dating your sister-in-law, I didn't lose my appetite like this." "No, President Yao, you're doing this for the company." Wu Ping smiled and said, "Look at the talents you've roped in these past few years. Haven't they all become the mainstays of the company? Isn't it all because of your repeated visits that we have the world we have now? Don't flatter me. The company can be where it is today because of your silent efforts." I've always seen it in my eyes and remembered it in my heart. Yao Dehua smiled. His tightly knitted eyebrows now relaxed a little. But you gave me an idea. Wu Ping's eyes widened and said in surprise. President Yao, you want to go to his house? That's too low for your status. No, what if he gives you the cold shoulder again? Wu Ping strongly objected to this matter. The company was no longer a small workshop like before. It was already a giant in the industry. If the boss personally went to someone's house to invite an employee, it would be fine if it succeeded. But if something went wrong, wouldn't it become a joke in the industry? So what if he gives me the cold shoulder? It's fine. Whether it succeeds or not, I still have to give it a try. Yao Dehua raised his head and said firmly. Wu Ping sighed and said, Is it worth it? Yao Dehua smiled and said, It's worth it. I believe in my foresight. Poplar Fruit's future is limitless. I have high hopes for him. He patted the table and said with his eyes shining, Then it's settled. Go back and help me check the address of Poplar Fruit's registration. Wu Ping's couldn't persuade him and could only say, Okay, I'll get Little Feng to send the address to you. Chapter 80. After work in the evening, Yao Dehua called home and said that he wouldn't be home for dinner. He then drove straight to Poplar Fruit's place. Because it wasn't a car from the neighborhood, Yao Dehua spent a lot of effort and a pack of Hongtishan to get the old guard to agree. But after entering, Yao Dehua realized that it would have been better to find a parking space outside. Why are there so many people? Yao Dehua frowned. His car was moving slower than a snail on the small path between the buildings. There were people coming and going along the road. Some aunties pulled their acquaintances to the middle of the road and started chatting happily. The path was not wide to begin with, so there was no way for them to pass through. Yao Dehua could only stop the car in front of the nearest building. He asked someone for directions and walked over. There was no elevator, so Yao Dehua went up the stairs. The corridor was narrow and old. It was the kind of stairs made of cement from the 90s. The surface was rough and uneven. There was a trash can at every corner. The residents' daily garbage was thrown in there. Fortunately, the property management cleaned it up in time, so it didn't emit the stench of garbage. But all of this made Yao Dehua, who was used to living in luxurious villas or high-end apartments, feel very uncomfortable. The corridor was dark and gloomy. Although the voice-activated lights above his head lit up when they sensed his footsteps, this kind of dim yellow light was particularly horrifying. Why do you live in such a bad place? Yao Dehua's heart was beating like a drum. He remembered that his secretary had told him about Poplar Fruit's income. Poplar Fruit's monthly income was more than 10,000. Who knew how many tens of thousands it was? Why do you live in such a bad place? Could it be that the address he filled in was fake? But since he was already here, Yao Dehua braced himself and walked down. After knocking a few times, the wooden door inside gently opened a small gap. Through the rusty iron door, Yao Dehua saw a head sticking out. From her hair to her face, Yao Dehua suddenly felt his eyes light up. The girl in front of him was so beautiful. Her beautiful facial features were so delicate that they looked like they were drawn in a painting. This made Yao Dehua, who was almost 50 years old, feel a little excited. But that was it. His own daughter was almost the same age as the girl in front of him. Yao Dehua had long passed the age of chasing girls. The girl's beautiful eyes stared straight at him, sizing up his sweaty Mediterranean hairstyle, frowning as she waited for him to speak. Yao Dehua understood and quickly asked, "Hello, is this Poplar Fruit's house? You're looking for Poplar Fruit?" Hearing this name, the girl's eyes seemed to flash. She asked, "Who are you?" "There's hope." Yao Dehua was overjoyed. He quickly took out a business card from his pocket and handed it over to the girl, saying, "I'm the general manager of Xinda Translation Company. I don't know if Poplar Fruit has told you that he's currently our company's gold medal interpreter." Speaking of Xinda, Duan Xueqing certainly knew about it. In the past, Poplar Fruit had even encouraged her to go there to earn money. However, she didn't lack that little bit of money. After registering, she would occasionally go up to take a look, or accept 2 missions to see if the knowledge she had learned in school had deteriorated. "Then you're Poplar Fruit's boss?" Duan Xueqing asked. I wouldn't dare to be a boss, Yao Dehua said with a smile. Our company aims to provide a platform for translators. We work together to benefit each other, especially for such an outstanding talent like Poplar Fruit. Our company attaches great importance to him. Rather than boss and employee, I think it's more appropriate to use the term partner. Hearing him praise Poplar Fruit, Duan Xueqing smiled and said softly, I don't know why you're here. Poplar Fruit doesn't live here anymore. Is that so? Where did he go? Yao Dehua asked. I couldn't get through to his phone before. Oh, you're talking about Poplar Fruit's 157 number, right? Some time ago he accidentally broke his SIM card, and he's been busy recently. He didn't have time to fix it, so now I can only call the landline where he lives, and it often doesn't go through. Duan Xueqing said. She was a little depressed when she mentioned this. Now that her mother was home, she wanted to get closer to Poplar Fruit, but Poplar Fruit was too busy to pay attention to her. I see. I don't know what he's been doing recently. I also didn't see him these days, so I came to visit, Yao Dehua said. Then let him tell you. I don't know if it's appropriate. Duan Xueqing pondered and said. Well, I'll give you his current address. Yao Dehua saw her gently close the door, and then after a while, she came out and stuffed a note into the gap of the iron door. This girl is really cautious. She's still worried about me. She's so careful, like a little lamb guarding against a big bad wolf. Yao Dehua didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he took the note. Jinli District. He was familiar with this place. He had some friends who lived there. This was a few years ago. Yangcheng was changing with each passing day, and now the most popular district for the rich was no longer there. However, he still had some impression of this district. He had been there before, and it was quite clean. Compared to where he was standing now, it was heaven and hell. After thanking Duan Xueqing, Yao Dehua hurriedly walked out of the building that looked like a man-eating beast. He ran to his car as if he was running away and drove away. This wasn't Yao Dehua being pretentious. It was easy to go from frugal to extravagant, but difficult to go from extravagant to frugal. This sentence could be used on most people. Yangcheng's roads extended in all directions, but during rush hour, there was still a problem of traffic jams. He was stuck on the viaduct, and he couldn't see the end of it. Yao Dehua had just opened the window when he heard the sound of horns. At this moment, the people on the road were all anxious. They had just finished a tiring day of work, and their wives and children had already prepared delicious food for them. Even if they knew that honking wouldn't work, they still couldn't help but pat the middle of the steering wheel. The air outside was scorched by the residual heat of the ground and the exhaust from the car. It was hot and smelly. Yao Dehua closed the window again. At least there was air conditioning in the car. He pressed a button, and a deep and melodious saxophone sound came from the high-end stereo in the car. The song Soulless Bridge, also known as Auld Lang Syne, was Yao Dehua's favorite. This song was already a classic, and with the saxophone playing, it became even more emotional. It was as if he was saying goodbye to a friend at a quiet and empty intersection. The gentle singing had a touch of sadness. Listening to the song and looking at the thousands of lights, Yao Dehua's anxious mood slowly calmed down even though his stomach was growling from hunger. He was now basically sure that Yangguo wasn't lying to him to avoid him, but really had something to do. This also proved that he wasn't wrong about Yangguo before. Since this was the case, why should he be anxious for a few minutes? Chapter 81. Why are you only back now? Poplar Fruit opened the door with Kiki in his arms. He turned around and went back in without looking up, asking, "Where's your key?" It was very late now, and Song Jiwen had yet to arrive. Kiki had already had her fill of milk, and Poplar Fruit had temporarily put down the work at hand to let his team members have dinner. However, he had nothing to eat, so he could only play with Kiki in the living room. Speaking of this, he suddenly realized something. He turned around and cried out in surprise, "Big brother Yao, why are you here?" He hurriedly let Yao Dehua, who was standing at the door, in. "You suddenly disappeared without a word, and I couldn't get through to you on the phone. Tell me, why am I here?" Yao Dehua changed into slippers and walked in. He patted Poplar Fruit on the shoulder and complained. Poplar Fruit thought about it carefully. Before turning to the project of sect leader Qiao's biography, he really hadn't mentioned it to Xinda. Moreover, there was a problem with the SIM card, so he didn't have time to get a new one. No wonder. Yang Guo apologized to Yao Dehua with a guilty expression and went to prepare tea for Yao Dehua. Yao Dehua hurriedly pulled him back and said, "Why are you carrying the child? I have my own hands and feet. Do I need you to serve me?" Poplar Fruit could only give up. He carried Kiki, who had just drunk milk and was still very energetic, with one hand and pointed to the fridge with the other. "Big brother Yao, there are soft drinks and fruits in here. You can eat and drink whatever you want. Don't be shy." "I won't be shy. I won't be shy with a kid like you." Yao Dehua opened the fridge and squatted down. He picked out some food and said, "Today you really screwed me over. You didn't even change your address after moving. You made me go to your old place for nothing." Kiki was also very curious. She craned her neck to see what Yao Dehua was doing. With one hand holding onto Poplar Fruit's collar, she leaned forward and almost escaped from Poplar Fruit's embrace. Poplar Fruit hurriedly hugged her and rubbed Kiki's little head. Her fluffy hair had grown a little longer, and it was very comfortable to touch. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Kiki, what do you want to see? Refrigerator? It's not like you haven't seen it before." Kiki was a little unhappy when she was pressed back into her father's arms. She pouted and looked at him with a little resentment in her eyes. But at this time, Yang Guo turned his head to Yao Dehua and asked curiously, "Big brother Yao, you also went there. Then how did you find me? Are they my former neighbors?" Yao Dehua took out a bottle of Sprite and 2 apples from the fridge. He closed the fridge door and said, "A girl told me that you live here." "Girl? Who is it?" Poplar Fruit asked curiously. "A pretty girl who lives in your old house," Yao Dehua said. Poplar Fruit suddenly realized. "You mean Xueqing?" He thought that Yao Dehua had met the enthusiastic Lu Gilin and Fong Wenjing. Yao Dehua didn't continue to discuss this with him. He drank a mouthful of soda and said, "Poplar Fruit, why don't you turn on the air conditioner at home? It's so hot. There are children at home. It's not very appropriate to turn on the air conditioner, haha." Poplar Fruit scratched his head and laughed. "Brother Yao, come sit in the living room. It's very comfortable to turn on the fan." After sitting down, Yao Dehua handed a clean apple to Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit waved his hand and ate it himself. He was also a little hungry. Yao Dehua asked as he ate, "I heard from your friend that you've been busy with a project recently? I haven't seen you log in on the system for a long time." Poplar Fruit heard this and his mouth moved slightly. He hesitated for a moment. Yao Dehua saw this and said, "What's wrong? Is it inconvenient to say?" "It's fine if it's inconvenient." He waved his hand generously, but his eyes were still looking at Poplar Fruit's expression from the corner of his eyes. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "It's not inconvenient. It's fine to tell Brother Yao. It's just that this matter is still confidential. Brother Yao, just keep it in your heart and don't tell anyone else." "What's so mysterious about it?" Yao Dehua asked curiously. "It's the translation of a book. I wonder if Brother Yao has heard of Steve Jobs?" Poplar Fruit said. "Steve Jobs? The CEO of Apple? Are you reading his autobiography?" Yao Dehua immediately understood after hearing Poplar Fruit's hint. Poplar Fruit was a little surprised. He asked, "Boss Yao, you also know about this book?" Yao Dehua raised his head and said, "How could I not know? Some time ago, it was hyped up and created a new crowdsourced translation method. The translation industry has long been in an uproar because of this. What do you think? You joined this project team. Do you think this model has any redeeming qualities?" After being in her father's arms for a long time, Kiki felt a little stuffy. She groaned and struggled with her hands and feet. Poplar Fruit had to move his body so that the fan could blow on her. Under the gusts of cool wind, Kiki finally calmed down. She laid on her father's shoulder, and a few strands of hair on her head swayed left and right under the fan's blowing. Yao Dehua and Kiki's eyes met. He raised his eyebrows with interest. His eyes widened and he even blinked, wanting to tease her. However, Kiki was not interested in him at all. She just glanced at him indifferently and ignored him. She felt her father's heartbeat and slowly closed her eyes. Poplar Fruit pondered Yao Dehua's question. He shook his head and said, "This model is not good. The more translators there are, the more uncontrollable the translation will be. The quality of the translation will be uneven. If there is a good thing, it is that when training translators, we can use the crowdsource model to let a skilled translator guide other translators. The effect is not bad. Through practical cooperation, they can learn faster. But this is not a new method. In fact, many foreign language schools have already adopted this teaching model," Poplar Fruit added. Yao Dehua's eyes lit up. He asked, "Wait, this model is effective for training translators. Do you mean on the internet?" "Yes, it's on the internet. As long as the translator in charge of guiding is skilled enough, he can guide several people at the same time. As long as he has a little bit of potential, he can learn in this practical mode and improve greatly. Of course, his future growth will still depend on his own efforts and ability to comprehend," Yanghua said. "This is worth a try." Poplar Fruit's words gave Yao Dehua a lot of inspiration. However, these inspirations were still relatively fragmented. If he wanted to integrate and implement them, he still needed to discuss with several managers in the company. He then discussed some specific details of the crowdsourced translation model with Poplar Fruit. When it came to work-related matters, Yao Dehua was also in high spirits. The hunger in his stomach was also forgotten. When it came to the happy part, Yao Dehua was so excited that he almost jumped up. He laughed heartily and said to Poplar Fruit, "I told you that you are very good. You see, you are also one of the best translators in the country. Look, such a big publishing house like Dongxin wants you to lead the translation project team. Do a good job." Yanghua smiled and said, "I'll do my best. Currently, the other side is chasing me very closely. Recently, I haven't had time to deal with other things. So I'm really sorry for causing so much trouble to Big Brother Yao." "It's nothing. Don't worry about it." Yao Dehua laughed and said, "You should read this book well. When the time comes, maybe Xindao will also benefit from you." Poplar Fruit sighed and said, "Brother Yao, to tell you the truth, I am not confident about this book at all. On the one hand, time is too tight. Everyone is desperately working overtime to race against time. On the other hand, it is crowdsourced translation. A book is divided among several people to translate. I am afraid the quality will be much lower. This book is the first book I have translated. I am afraid that I will mess it up. Recently, when I sleep at night and close my eyes, I always dream that there are readers coming to me with the book, saying that they want a refund if I don't translate it well." Yao Dehua comforted him softly and said, "You are putting too much pressure on yourself. Didn't you just say it to me? Every time, you will seriously revise the manuscripts that others turn over. With you working so hard, how bad can this book be? And you should also have confidence in yourself. You are our best gold medal translator. You represent the strongest strength in Guangdong province. If you can't do it, won't our Guangdong province also be unable to do it?" Yanghua was amused by him. He laughed and said, "Big Brother Yao, don't flatter me. How can I represent Guangdong province? How can I do that?" By the way, Yao Dehua suddenly remembered something and said, "When I came just now, were you waiting for someone to come back?" "Oh, I was waiting for my friend. He will bring me food when he comes back. Recently, I have been so busy that I don't even have time to cook." Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "Brother Yao, have you eaten? Do you want me to ask him to bring more?" Yao Dehua laughed and said, "I thought you were hiding a mistress in a golden house, and there are other girls living here. You don't have to trouble your friend. Let's eat outside. I used to have friends living here, and I still remember that there are several good restaurants nearby. Are you free? Are you still busy tonight?" Yao Dehua asked because he was worried that Poplar Fruit was still not free. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "It's okay. There is still time to eat. Brother Yao, lead the way. Today is the first time you have come to my house. I will treat you." Yao Dehua said with a smile, "Then I will respectfully accept. I know that you are tall, rich, and handsome now. I won't make you poor. Haha. Hurry up and let's go down." I am starving. Kiki had slowly fallen asleep while they were chatting. Anyway, they were just having dinner near the community. Poplar Fruit put her to bed to sleep. She followed Yao Dahua to a private restaurant on the street behind the community. It was said that the owner's ancestors were imperial chefs. The history was not known, but the culinary skills were really good. The soup was quail meat stewed with coconut juice, and it was particularly sweet and rich. The most famous dish was their partridge stew rice. The partridge meat was cut out and baked with fragrant rice. Before it was served, the whole aisle was filled with the fragrance, and it could be smelled through the door. Other dishes such as stewed goose and pig feet, and beef with sour bamboo shoots, were also very delicious. Poplar Fruit and Yao Dahua ate happily, and the two of them chatted for a long time. For Yao Dahua, the happiest thing was meeting Poplar Fruit. His mood was finally lifted. Chapter 82. During the National Day holiday, the entire country was immersed in the holiday atmosphere. All the major tourist attractions were almost bursting with hundreds of millions of Chinese people. However, on this day that was supposed to be a break, Poplar Fruit and his 3 other team members didn't give themselves any time to relax. The ticking sound in their heads was like the sword of Damocles hanging over their heads. That trembling horse's mane was about to be cut off at any second. On the second day of the holiday, Zheng Yujie, who had been busy for more than a month without rest, started her vacation. Under the immense pressure, she was also working nonstop like Poplar Fruit. All she wanted to do was to complete this big project to the best of her ability. However, she didn't know what was wrong with her. It was rare for her to have a few days of rest. Instead of sleeping in at home in Beijing, she actually flew thousands of miles to Guangzhou and stayed at Poplar Fruit's house for the past few days. If everyone thought that a man and a woman living in a room together would have some kind of romance, then they were completely wrong. Youngwood didn't have the time to think about women right now. Even if Zheng Yujie, who was so familiar that he could pinch juice out of her, walked around in front of him all day long in hot pants and a halter top, he was still indifferent. Zheng Yujie once tried to gather the courage to snuggle up to Poplar Fruit's back. Her soft and hot body was about to throw itself into his arms, but Poplar Fruit impatiently pushed her out of the study and closed the door. Zheng Yujie was so angry that she pinched the pillow in the living room and scolded him. Unromantic blockhead. Zheng Yujie didn't know why, but after all these years, she just had to fall in love with Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit was indeed tall and handsome, but it wasn't as if Zheng Yujie had never seen a handsome guy before. Among the men who pursued her in Beijing, there were at least a few who were taller and more handsome than Poplar Fruit. Moreover, their family backgrounds and financial strength were miles ahead of Poplar Fruit. In terms of talent, Poplar Fruit was indeed not inferior to anyone, but others were also very outstanding. Several of them became the bosses of listed companies before the age of 30. Zheng Yujie didn't know what kind of bewitching potion Poplar Fruit had given her. The last time she came, she had only spent a day with him, but Poplar Fruit's figure had been firmly imprinted in her heart. But why was this big blockhead so ungrateful? Zheng Yujie thought bitterly. When it was time to sleep that night, Poplar Fruit consciously gave the master bedroom to Zheng Yujie. He slept on the sofa in the living room, and even moved Kiki's crib out. Because Zheng Yujie was a delicate young lady who never did any household chores, Poplar Fruit even helped her wash her clothes, including her underwear. Although it was very embarrassing, Poplar Fruit didn't complain at all. Other than being busy and not having time to cook for her, Poplar Fruit was very considerate toward Zheng Yujie. However, the entire National Day holiday wasn't peaceful. On the 3rd of October, the second night after Zheng Yujie came, Duan Xueqing came to Poplar Fruit's house without any warning. Duan Xueqing originally thought that Poplar Fruit had been so busy recently that he didn't even have time to cook. So she went to the market to buy some cooked vegetables, and came to Poplar Fruit's house to cook for him. But who knew that when she knocked on the door, she would see a casually dressed beauty with a hot body. Duan Xueqing, who had a faint smile on her face, immediately restrained her expression. Her whole person was like a big ice cube on Mount Tianshan, emitting a cold air from head to toe. She said coldly, "Who are you? Why are you here?" Zheng Yujie was also very surprised. The guest was actually an ice beauty, who looked elegant and otherworldly. This made Zheng Yujie, who had always been very confident in her appearance, become alarmed. She thought to herself, "Who is this woman? Could she be Poplar Fruit's girlfriend? That can't be right. Didn't he say that he broke up with his girlfriend?" She also frowned and retorted rudely, "Oh, such a big tone. You're the guest, aren't you? Who are you? I should be the one asking you that, right? Look at this time, it's already so late. Why are you suddenly so angry? What are you trying to do? Running to someone else's house? Don't you know how to write the word courtesy?" Growing up in Beijing's alley, Zheng Yujie's mouth was very sharp, and the Beijing accent kept jumping out. Duan Xueqing wasn't good at arguing with others. She was so angry at Zheng Yujie that her pink face turned dark red. After holding it in for a long time, she said, "Someone else's house? Is this your house? If it's not my house, then is it your house? Look at what you're saying." Zheng Yujie felt a sense of crisis. She was implying that she was the mistress of this house. "What are you arguing about? Xueqing is here?" Hearing the argument outside, Poplar Fruit poked his head out of the study. Seeing that it was Duan Xueqing, he hurried over to greet her. Come in, come in." Since Poplar Fruit had already spoken, Zheng Yujie could only move aside embarrassedly. She flung her short hair and took the lead to return to the living room. Duan Xueqing's face was still cold. She walked in expressionlessly and didn't give Poplar Fruit a good look. Scratching his head, he was a little confused. Poplar Fruit introduced them to each other. "Xueqing, this is Dongxin's chief editor, Zheng Yujie. She's now in charge of my project team. Because of work, she'll be staying with me for the next few days. Miss Zheng, this is Duan Xueqing, my junior. She's also an excellent translator." The two women had just met, but the atmosphere was already at daggers drawn. Even though Poplar Fruit was mediating, they couldn't be bothered to greet each other. Duan Xueqing wasn't good at mocking others. She just snorted coldly, expressing her dissatisfaction with Zheng Yujie's act of pretending to be the mistress of the house. Zheng Yujie couldn't be bothered to explain. She still harbored a deep hostility towards Duan Xueqing. She turned her head and pretended to look out of the window, but she was complaining in her heart. Junior, I know you're a playboy. You like young and beautiful girls. You're an old cow eating young grass. You're not a good thing." She completely forgot that her intention towards Poplar Fruit was also an old cow eating young grass. Standing in the living room, Duan Xueqing pulled Poplar Fruit's cuff, who didn't know what to say. She said, "Brother Yang." And Poplar Fruit looked at her with concern. He saw a bulging bag in her hand and quickly reached out to take it. "What did you bring? Isn't it heavy? Come, put it on the table." Duan Xueqing was particularly happy with Poplar Fruit's thoughtfulness. She smiled sweetly and said, "And I brought some dishes for you. I'll cook for you later." "Okay, the three of us will eat together. You haven't eaten yet, right?" Poplar Fruit responded casually. Duan Xueqing's nose twitched. She muttered, "But I only bought a portion for you and me. Who knew there would be other people here? You didn't even tell me." She didn't avoid Zheng Yujie sitting next to her. "Who wants you to buy?" Zheng Yujie stood up, took out her mobile phone and said, "I'll order a table of dishes and ask someone to send it over. It's definitely better than yours." Poplar Fruit felt a headache coming on. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.